Welcome to the December 5th School Board meeting. This meeting is now in session. Thank you for your patience and for the little delay we had there. And I would ask all of you to please rise as our Career Center Air Force JROTC cadets present the colors.
Color guard, and on, carry, color, forward, arch. Color guard. Hold. Breathe, and colors. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Order, colors. Center, heads. Forward, arch.
Thank you. You may be seated. We have two recognitions tonight. And first, I'd like to introduce Mr. Paul Ferguson, Clerk of the Court for Arlington County, who will swear in our colleague to his second term as a member of the school board. Mr. Goldstein.
Thank you, Chairwoman Talento. As Mr. Goldstein comes forward, I'd just like to briefly say that it's been an honor to have known him for many, many years. As all of the school board members have done before they came to the school board, they were leaders in the Arlington community in many different ways. It's a testament to Mr. Goldstein's leadership, not just in the county, but in his particular neighborhood and area of the county, that there's at least 3 past civic associations from his neighborhood and a couple from surrounding neighborhoods here to cheer you on tonight, Mr. Goldstein. So the community in Arlington thanks you for agreeing to serve another 4 years. Would you please raise your right hand? Do you, Reed Goldstein, solemnly swear or affirm that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Virginia, and that you will faithfully and impartially discharge all the duties incumbent upon you as a member of the Arlington County School Board for a term beginning January 1st, 2020 and ending December 31st, 2023, according to the best of your ability?
I will.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Would you please sign right here? Just need to take this and sign it, and
I'll take the remarks.
take the
there.
remarks. Sorry about that.
So
And
am I
I will
making
get a
remarks
copy.
now?
Yeah, and I'll get a copy to Ms. Mercado tomorrow morning.
Are you going to stay for the
I
remarks?
will stay for
Okay.
remarks, I promise.
Thank you, Mr. Ferguson.
Doesn't always happen. Thank you very much, Paul. I appreciate it. Thank you for the kind words. So let me start with a round of thank yous first. So first, thank you to my campaign manager, Henry Dunbar, and my entire campaign team and their families, because they truly did all the hard work. Thank you to the people from all corners of the county and beyond, including Mom, thanks Mom, who supported me with hosting events and literature distribution and financial donations, phone calls, door knocking, moral support, and myriad other activities. Thank you to my colleagues and the Arlington Public School workforce for putting up with my quirks of personality and schedule. Thank you to my informal sounding board groups, and indeed all the vocal members of the Arlington community from whom I have learned and will continue to learn a lot. Thank you to the voters of Arlington who believed in my work during my first term and trusted me enough to employ me for a second term. I have 2 degrees in political science, and I consider the authority to serve as a solemn trust, as Thomas Jefferson said, derived from the consent of the governed. And finally, thank you to my wife, Carol, who unfortunately could not be here today, for indulging and supporting my desire to take on this job, not because of the fame and fortune that results, but because I think I can contribute to the community in which we live and thrive. As a result of my reelection, she's promised me a special treat. I will no longer need to wear a name tag when I come home late, so she knows who I am. This job is about making a good thing better. In 4 years, I've learned some of the awesome things that occur in Arlington Public Schools. The term resting on our laurels is not appropriate here. No one is resting. Amazing, thoughtful, highly skilled, dedicated, hard work continues daily. And the results for our students are evident. But holding the ship's rudder isn't good enough because the winds shift and the destination changes and not all the rocks are apparent. We have to be actively piloting that ship all the time, and that's the job I pledge to do for the next 4 years. And finally, I want to talk about current events. 2 of my colleagues will be leaving the school board in a year, and I wish them well. To fill those seats, I want to remind everyone that good government is not a spectator sport. Maya Angelou said, "Service is the rent we pay for our place on earth." I've always encouraged people who believe they have the skills necessary to take on the challenges and an interest in public service to step up and run for public office. Stepping up is a duty of citizenship. We cannot enjoy the benefits of an educated and free democracy without it. Thanks again to everyone.
Congratulations, Mr. Goldstein. We appreciate your ongoing commitment to APS. And thank you, Mr. Ferguson, for being here with us and coming to our meeting tonight to swear in Mr. Goldstein. We really appreciate you taking the time. Okay, thank you. So for our next recognition, we're going to hear a report from a group of students who attended the recent Minority Student Achievement Network Conference. But I would first like to recognize some of our principals and coordinators who are here supporting their work. I'd like to recognize Principal Bridget Law from Yorktown, Principal Dr. Greg Robertson from Washington Liberty, Principal Margaret Chung from the Career Center and Arlington Tech Programs, and Principal Casey Robinson from the H.B. Woodlawn Program. And I'd also like to recognize our coordinators, Sherry Benitez, Monica Lozano, and James Sample, who work very closely with our MSAN attendees and so much other work that they do in our schools to ensure that everyone has access to all opportunities without any barriers in their way. So thank you for being here with us this evening. And now I would like to introduce Carolyn Jackson, Supervisor of the Office of Equity and Excellence, who will introduce our students. Thank you, Ms. Jackson.
Thank you. And also I would like to thank Monica Lozano, who's in the audience from the Arlington Career Center, one of our coordinators also. So good evening, and I'm glad that we were able to present this evening to our wonderful school board, executive leadership team, and interim superintendent, Ms. Cynthia Johnson, as well as our families, our students, our community, and staff. It is with great pleasure and inspiration to recognize the unique and valuable experiences of our 2019 MSAN student delegates. Before we hear from our students, I would like to give a sincere appreciation for all the support that we are given for the Minority Student Achievement Network. The Minority Achievement Student Network is a national coalition of multiracial school districts that come together to understand eliminating opportunity and achievement gaps that persist in our schools. Arlington County Schools is one of the original members of this organization that just celebrated 20 years of research, professional learning, and advocacy. The mission of the coalition is to understand the changes and the practices and the structures that keep racial opportunities and achievement gaps in place. The MSAM Student Conference was created to allow students to drive the educational equity work. Student leaders are encouraged to take their unique experiences, engage others to inspire change, and promote success for all students in their school district and beyond. Please listen carefully to our student leaders. Their messages are powerful. It speaks to the potential that every student has, regardless of circumstances and identifiers. As you enjoy their presentations tonight, remember that APS is for all learners.
Good evening, school board, Superintendent Cynthia Johnson, executive leadership team, and Ms. Carolyn Jackson. My name is Abel Galetta, and I am a junior at Washington Liberty High School. Recently, my fellow classmates and I had the pleasure of attending a Minority Student Achievement Network conference in Madison, Wisconsin, this past October. The theme of this year's conference was The Roses That Grew from Concrete, which originated from a famous rapper named Tupac Shakur. Growing up in Ethiopia and moving here in the second grade made me face some hardships and challenges along the way. Due to my lack of English knowledge, I was a pariah in my school, and for many years I was in Hilt because due to low expectations and beliefs that I was incapable of learning at the same pace as my classmates. But like the many other student participants that attended the MSAN conference, I was able to overcome this obstacle stacked against me and able to rise like a rose from concrete. Now I am a full IB diploma candidate at Washington Liberty High School, and I'm a proud member of the Superintendent's Student Advisory Board. This overarching theme showed me that many minorities' talents are hindered because they feel like their ideas and perspectives don't matter, and many feel like they don't have a safe space to fully express themselves. During our conference, our main goals were to engage in discussions about
That's the pointer. Is it remote? You should be able to just.
Okay, I'll just go.
Go, let me figure it out. There it is.
Okay, during our conference, our main goals were to engage in discussions about barriers, colors of students of color faced in our communities and school districts through special guest speakers and interacting with other students that attended the conference. And we networked with students from across the country to craft solutions that many minorities faced around the nation. And we shared our ideas about how to motivate students from across the country to meet their potential. And we developed plans of action to implement in our communities. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Darius Khani, and I attend Yorktown High School. We are so fortunate to have had the opportunity to visit a top university, the University of Wisconsin. We each had an overall tour of the campus as well as a personalized tour of a section of the campus tailored towards our interests, such as engineering, business, or education. Additionally, we were able to visit the different groups and societies centered around minority achievement, such as the Multicultural Center. The Multicultural Center offers a plethora of support and opportunities for minority students. This is a unique experience for me because not often that minority students get to see people like themselves succeeding in an academic environment, and allowed me personally to envision myself in the same position. We decided that this was an experience we wanted to bring back to our school district. This gave us the idea to use Twitter and other social media to provide opportunities for minority students to allow them to have the same epiphany and envision themselves succeeding in the future.
Good evening. I'm Jackie Duran. I attend Yorktown High School. This past October, I was in the conference MSAM, and some great speakers came in and spoke to us. But one that spoke to me the most was Jose Gonzalez. He talked about the way being raised in America, being a person or student of color, the problems that we all go through, and how some people take a look at us and think that we're probably bad or that we're not going to be anybody in life. But we all got a voice and we can use it. At last but not least, I think we should have more adults that look at like us so that students can feel like they have somebody to talk to, that they can trust and understand the way they feel.
Hi, my name is Jacob Harrison, and again, I would like to reiterate, thank you for the trip. I appreciate it. It was very humbling and a powerful trip. Again, I would like to also thank one of our chaperones that could not be here, Chief Master Sergeant Kim Turner. She's also my teacher for ROTC. And another powerful speaker was Mandela Barnes, as you can see. He lived in Milwaukee, born and raised in Milwaukee, December 1st. At a young age, he involved himself in mechanical engineering and so on, moved to Alabama A&M University. And unfortunately, it did not work out for him. He thought he wasn't feeling mechanical engineering anymore, so he later on decided to enrich himself in politics. Now, 33 years later, he was pronounced the first African-American lieutenant governor. Being though that he was a black African-American or black, it took some time. Not everybody's gonna like the ideas that he brought to the table. He was involved in many organizations throughout his campaign. When he lost his election for state senate and took some time to regain and think about his actions, he was very shocked. But now for his campaign, he won as lieutenant governor, and it was a powerful speech. And being though that I was a minority, speaking to us was a very powerful moment. It made me think. He told us a lot about follow your dreams, don't give up. You are a minority, but for your actions to show, you have to be involved with many things, academic-wise, and show that you are powerful in what you do. And that was very empowering for me.
Hi, my name is Janiyah Brown, and I'm a junior at Washington Liberty. While on this trip, we were given the task of coming up with an action plan that would help us achieve our goal and to what we want changed in our community. While there, we came up with the goal to give students a place to share ideas, culture, issues, and perspectives that impact themselves and the community. In order to achieve this goal, we came up with a few actions that we thought we should take. The first action we came up with was creating student-led seminars. Some other actions we came up with were holding activities, creating a student-led Twitter account, serving for the advisory board for the Office of Equity and Excellence.
Good evening. My name is Stephanie Achugamanu, and I attend Wakefield High School. We felt that the goal that Janiyah just mentioned was important because in order for students of color to be engaged in their learning, they first have to have a solid foundation. This can only happen if students know who they are and love who they are, have a strong sense of identity, and have a voice in their education. Administrators, teachers, parents, and students have to be aware of and sensitive to all the needs of their students and their different cultures. Students of color need to have access to equity and excellence resources and opportunities that will prepare them for a successful future after high school. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Fatima Salim, and I attend HB Woodlawn. Now that we have discussed our actions and goals, it is important to bring light to topics that we find significant. We have listed some on the screen, but I am going to be going through a few. For example, one of our topics is gaining a diverse curriculum in our school system. A method to approach this goal could be ongoing teacher trainings to diversify our school curriculum and to provide ethnic studies to schools that don't have so already. Another topic which needs awareness of our school system is Muslim awareness. In order to implement this into our school system, it is essential that we acknowledge the importance of prayer for Muslim students during school times and the month of Ramadan, which often collides with SOL and AP testing. Thank you.
We are so fortunate and wholeheartedly thankful to our education system, to the Arlington education system and our families for providing us with the means, support, and opportunity to go to this conference and learn from the speakers, students, and overall experience for providing us with allowing us to have a voice and leadership role in helping our community. For us to reach our goals and for all APS students, to prepare all APS students for the global society, we will need support from the school board, our teachers, and administrators. And we need to not only have access to a rigorous course schedule, but a nurturing, compassionate environment as well. No student can succeed if their educational environment doesn't embrace every student's individual stories. It is essential for our teachers, the school board, and administrators to understand and provide for the seeds that will grow into the roses of the future. Thank you. Are there any questions?
Thank you for the presentation. And if you wouldn't mind staying there, I'm going to invite my colleagues for questions and comments. And thank you, really. It was really wonderful to hear you speak and hear about what you learned. So colleagues, are there any questions or comments? Go ahead, Dr. Kennedy.
Thank you very much for your all your presentations. It was really fun to listen to, and we're really glad that you had this opportunity. I actually wanted to ask you about your Twitter account, or your Twitter. Did you set up one? Let me actually tell you more about what I'm looking for. We often talk about social media and Twitter as being this place that's really it's isolating and in a variety of ways makes us all anxious. But the truth is, it really is a way that we can connect with others who really need support. And I see it in APS with our teachers. They engage with teachers across the Commonwealth and across the country, talking about best practice and different things. So I was curious, as you mentioned, I think Twitter or social media a couple of times, if that's part of your thinking is to really connect across the Commonwealth or across the country, and if you've been doing a little bit of that and what you've experienced. And also, what is your Twitter handle, if you don't mind sharing?
Okay, so we haven't created the account yet, but it is to help connect us, like us students, and also the community around us, so that not only are we sharing the ideas with ourselves, but we're sharing it with everyone, and so everybody can see what we feel like needs to be changed.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Ms. O'Grady.
I want to thank you guys for spending the time in Madison and getting to learn from other students from across the country, and for coming back with such great ideas. And I appreciated the conversation about diverse curriculum and Muslim awareness. There's some other really important items on that on the screen. And I didn't know if any of you wanted to just quickly address any of those other experiences that you're having that you think need to be addressed. Because I do think that your thoughts and your experiences that you're having in school, we need to understand them and know them, so that we will know how to respond. Like even today, we're going to be talking about diverse curriculum. And so hearing you say that that's important and it's valued by you helps us know that this is something we should be looking at. So anything else you guys want to talk about up there?
Hi again. Just to touch on that, reviving Black/minority imagination, I think that this is really important to me because I've noticed that there is a lack of maybe books, like for example in English classes, I feel like I'm not really reading about books from a diverse set of authors. I feel that we can really learn and gain from reading about authors and like reading books from authors who look like us, who have gone through things that we are going through, and just to add to that experience that we have in school and really benefit from it.
Thank you for sharing. Anybody else want to share one other thing?
Yeah, I wanted to touch up on like finding minority voice in classes. Like one of the things I see is like I take like a lot of rigorous classes, and most of the times I'm like the only minority in my class. But I mean, I don't have trouble finding my like voice. I'm always like open to talking. But I feel like most other kids that are in that class, they're scared to talk because they might feel like the other people in the class might be judging them and that they don't have the same like perspectives and ideas about them. But I mean, I feel like it's like underlying that, making sure that at the beginning we're always working to like help minorities reach their goals. Like starting back in like 6th grade, making sure that they're like ahead and trying to make sure that they're getting the same education as other people and providing them to reach high standards. But other than that, I think you guys have done really well with the minorities. I feel like, yeah.
Aw, thank you. I just wanted to quickly share that I have had the wonderful experience of attending 2 MSAN conferences myself. We have the opportunity as leaders to go out and participate in Madison in a spring conference. And during that conference, we are able to meet with administrators and leaders across the country that work with students from diverse backgrounds. And one of the things I experienced the first year that I went was I had the opportunity to speak to equity officers, and I was able to come back with that information and help us think about setting an equity policy, which we're working on and continuing to develop in preparation for a new diversity, equity, and inclusion officer that we hope to have in place next year. And so with any fortune, we'll be able to have that person in place, and perhaps they can look at these items that you've brought forward and help us figure out how to make some of them a reality. So thank you guys. And best of luck. And if you like Madison, talk to your counselors about the POSSE program, POSSE scholarship program, because students are able to go to Madison, Wisconsin if they are POSSE scholar winners. And we've had many from APS go to Madison on a full tuition ride. So keep that in mind. Okay, thanks, guys.
Thank you. Wait, you can't leave. Hold on.
I'm sorry.
She's done, but I'm not.
I'm not, yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to dismiss you.
I'm a big mental health advocate. It's something that I'm constantly discussing and trying to be very open about, and making sure that people know it's okay to talk about, because to me, it's just like any other, physical ailment that we have to support each other with. And I'm curious, I know a little bit about the mental health and diverse community discussion that I've partaken in, but I'm curious, how do you view that discussion? I noticed in your topics. And could you just talk a little bit about what you're looking for specifically when you talk about mental health and diverse community?
That topic is very important to me too, because coming from an African household where sickness and disease is really only looked at as like physical ailments, like you said, I think one common thread throughout all like minority groups is that they kind of struggle to come to terms that, yes, mental health is important. And we feel that if we have that as a topic that we could discuss at maybe future group meetings that we have with our community, people might be comfortable to talk about their experiences, and actually this might help a lot of us like just come to terms with that and understand that our mental health should come first. And yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. And Mr. Goldstein or Ms. Van Doren, did you have any comments at this time? Okay, thank you. Mr. Goldstein, do you have any comments? Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks very much for the presentation and for your continued involvement and interest in this. And so I have a question. I think it was a year ago, after the MSAN conference, students came, the one in the fall, students came and, did what you did, talked about what happened there. And I think it was at that time that they raised the idea of the term the global majority instead of the term minority students. And I'd really like to see that term, get some legs. Is this happening? Did you hear this at your conference? Do you hear the term global majority more? Is this, I'm curious about, is this thing snowballing or not?
We did not.
Okay.
Okay, that's an answer.
Okay.
However, at this conference, we did learn that there are a lot of people of color breaking boundaries and making very successful living habits for themselves as adults. And I think just having like group panels at this conference and having these keynote speakers come who are very successful people of color, it did show that, yes, there are people of color pushing through these obstacles prepared for them, and they are succeeding, and they're coming back to the community to tell us about that and how we could see ourselves in those positions when we mature and grow up.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you all. Thanks again.
So I just want to say thank you to all of you, and I'd like to take a moment, if you could, if any parents and family members who are here supporting these students, if you could please stand, we'd like to acknowledge you and thank you for allowing your students. Thank you. I think we have some future leaders here in the making, and it's very exciting to have you be part of our meeting tonight. I would like to ask that you come to the front with us to take a picture, and I'd like to take the opportunity again to thank our principals and coordinators, and if you would please join us for the picture. Thank you for supporting your students this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you all again for joining us this evening. We are now at announcements, and so I will start them as people are exiting the room. On December 9th, we will host the annual legislative breakfast for our state legislators and neighboring school boards and superintendents, beginning at 8 a.m. here in our boardroom. On Thursday, December 12th, we will hold a committee of the whole meeting at 5 p.m., followed by a closed meeting at 7 in the board conference room. And that meeting may become open, we just are not sure yet. But we will be having a meeting December 12th at 5 and then another meeting at 7. On December 17th, there will be a meeting of the School Board Policy Subcommittee at 2 p.m. And at 5 p.m. that evening, we have a closed meeting in the board conference room. Board members, are there any announcements that you would like to make? Mr. Goldstein.
Thank you. So I have some announcements here about things happening at one of my liaison schools, Kenmore Middle School. Kenmore distributed holiday meal gift boxes to 25 Arlington families. The school raised 1,500 pounds of donated items that will be used for 2 distributions. This is the 10th year that Kenmore has partnered with Arlington County Police to distribute food for the holiday break. Kenmore's school resource officer, Jackie Pagan, and Principal David McBride directly delivered food boxes to local families. Kenmore benefited from many kind contributions from the community, including students and staff and the Los Niños de Maria Foundation. Students from the check-in program and special programs classes decorated and organized the gift boxes. Kenmore also hosted a traditional Thanksgiving community meal for 25 English learner families who are new to the country. During the meal, cultural practices were explained by students who had researched Thanksgiving in the United States. And Kenmore also hosted a successful Myths and Memoirs evening event that showcased 8th grade student writing and art. And this was a culminating event for the first quarter projects in English classes. And this event included live music, readings, and dramatic presentations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Goldstein. Any other announcements, colleagues? Okay, I just wanted to add that we did add an additional policy subcommittee meeting on December 10th. And let me find the time for you. It was not our regular scheduled meeting. We added it because we were not able to complete our work at our, it's at 1 p.m. at our last meeting. So I just wanted to announce that we do have a meeting on December 10th. Did you have an announcement? Okay, go ahead, Ms. O'Grady.
I just wanted to share with the community that our own Dr. Barbara Kennanen was elected the Northeastern Regional Chair of the Virginia School Board Association. She's going to serve on the Virginia School Board Association's Board of Directors for a 2-year term. And we're so excited to have her represent us and the rest of the region across the state. Thank you. Thank you.
And as I mentioned before, I'm not as good as Mr. Goldstein in representing the liaison schools, but I do know of something that happened at Arlington Community High School today that I thought I would share. They had a poetry out loud competition, and I'm excited to hear how that turned out, but I don't have the results. I couldn't attend because I was praying for the board meeting, but it is a wonderful experience when our students get to do the poetry, read out loud, and compete. So I'm looking forward to sharing more news about that. Finally, I did want to provide an update on our superintendent search progress. I want to share that after a thorough request for proposal and review process, the board has selected BWP and Associates to assist us in hiring a permanent superintendent. On November 26th, we published a notice of intent to award the contract to BWP and the APS procurement webpage on the APS procurement webpage, and it is anticipated that a contract will be entered into on Monday, December 9th. Once the contract has been entered into, we plan to get right to work. We will issue a news release on Monday with more details once the contract is official. Hiring a permanent superintendent is the single most important task for the school board this year, and we're focused on getting it right and getting right to work to find the best candidate for our school division. We are committed to conducting a transparent and inclusive process that will emphasize community input in shaping the profile and qualities we're seeking in a new leader. BWP has a long track record of successfully recruiting educational leaders and attracting diverse candidates that are responsive to the needs of the community. There's much to do in the months ahead, and as a reminder, in terms of timeline, I did want to share that Virginia law requires that the division superintendent shall be appointed by the school board within 180 days after a vacancy occurs, and allows for one request for an extension. We will be filing the request for extension to allow the time necessary to find the best candidate for APS. And we will continue to share details on our Engage page, and we'll share more through School Talk on Monday once the contract has been entered into. So please stay tuned, and thank you for your patience and continued involvement and in the work that we are doing. So now we will hear the interim superintendent's announcements and updates. Ms. Johnson.
Good evening, school board members. It's a pleasure to give you these updates. And I'm going to start with the fact that this month we kick off our annual Sound of the Season. It really is a wonderful time of the month that we hear from our talented students at every single grade level. So most of our schools are hosting winter concerts, plays, or special performances now, and they do go all the way through December the 21st. We do have a complete calendar on our website, and a school talk message was sent out yesterday. So please refer to that document. And we want to send a special reminder to our senior citizens that you can request a card and be able to receive free admission to all of these wonderful events. Oh, you have a senior card. Thank you for sharing that with us. So please come and see our talented students throughout APS. This year, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Literary and Visual Arts Contest is underway, and submissions are due by December the 21st. This year, students all the way from kindergarten through 12th grade are asked to share about peace and what it means to them. And they can do that through the arts or essays or poetry. And they need to have the entries in by 5 p.m. on Friday, December the 20th. And you can find additional information on our website, and it's also noted here on this slide. So we just came back from Thanksgiving break, and December is a short month in a lot of ways. We have an early release day on the 11th, and then winter break is fast approaching. We also do want to remind the community about our January 17th deadline, and that's for middle school and high school transfers, or if you want to consider option programs or school. It was really nice hearing a little bit from Mr. Goldstein and Ms. Talento around, this connection with students and some of the things that they are experiencing as a result of going to the schools. I continue to focus on students. So each week I'm visiting schools and I'm connecting with students. I'm having conversations with them to get a better handle and an understanding of what it means to really have a positive relationship with somebody in your school building. And leading up to Thanksgiving, I had the opportunity to connect with students at Tuckahoe. I hope many of you had an opportunity to see the video, but it's all around this positivity project that they're working on. I was really impressed by the gratitude and the connections that students were making, because they not only made it to other individuals, they talked about positivity and gratitude for nature and for the military and for even having swim coach or the safeguard, lifeguards. Thank you very much for helping me out. The lifeguards there, which I thought was really a very special recognition to somebody who perhaps doesn't get that recognition. So when we listen to students, they have a lot to tell us that's of great value. During Thanksgiving, I also went to a couple of Thanksgiving celebrations. I had a chance to be at Williamsburg and Langston and talk to students as well. And for many of them, Thanksgiving was a different and new celebration, but they all had things that they were very appreciative of at their school site. I know that today I was at Long Branch and I learned that Mr. Goldstein was there being interviewed by the 5th grade TV crew, and he was interviewed because they wanted to have a better understanding of what it is to be a school board member. I was interviewed because students wanted to learn a little bit more about the role of a superintendent and what I really liked about the job. And do you want to guess what my answer was? You got it. Yes, I thoroughly enjoy that aspect of the work. So they asked some really great questions, again, and that is going to be part of their morning announcement. And Ms. Talento, I did have a chance to go over to Arlington Community High School and see the competition of the students doing the poetry read aloud. And I do know who the winner is. And I'm actually hoping that at the next school board meeting, that individual will be here to share their presentation. No, I think I'll keep that as a special secret. So anyway, the interactions with students continue to be a pleasure, and there's a lot that you can learn by listening to students. And I'll continue that journey. So we have been hard at work on the projects that are outlined in the school board's 2019-20 action plan. So this is just a reminder that we are continuing that work and providing the updates as needed. And with that, I'd like to have Mr. Redding speak to the Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. We are underway with interviews for the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer position, moving into interviews with panels of stakeholders who will engage with the officer as this individual comes on board and really digs into the equity work in APS. So we have completed the community survey, and that data has been being analyzed and will be available to the interview committees as they review candidates. And we are preparing, we're on track to have this individual, to have a recommendation for appointment at the board meeting on December 19th.
Looking forward to that appointment. The next slide really speaks to something that was mentioned at the last meeting. APS is working with the Arlington Partnership for Children, Youth, and Families on the 2020 Your Voice Matters survey. This survey is done every other year and provides a snapshot of our school culture, the staff engagement, and student and family well-being in Arlington. You might recall that over the summer and the fall, we did obtain staff feedback, and that's really what's driven the design of and the development of the survey that we have, and it will be administered early 2020. So we're looking forward to a very strong participation, and we want to encourage everyone to just stay informed. So there are several community meetings that are being held regarding elementary schools and planning, and the dates are listed here, and they're also listed on Engage, and we want to continue to encourage the community to provide input throughout this process. So please note the dates here. I want to make mention of the process for the budget adoption. And so again, here are some key dates to keep in mind as we're developing the budget based on the school board's budget direction. The full budget development calendar is in fact available online and also on the Budget and Finance webpage. So we'll continue to keep you informed, and as we get closer to the February 27th presentation of the superintendent's proposed budget. So the next two slides really speak to operational planning, and I would like to be able to have Mr. Chadwick speak to them.
Good evening. So this evening, the school board, you will act on the CIP direction, which for the first time includes the list of design studies that we will do as part of our CIP process. And those studies will start as soon as we have the purchase requisitions in place. And they will be completed by the end of February so that we can then start to build in them to the balancing that we do in April between when the seats are needed, where they're needed, and how many we need. That then ends up in the interim superintendent's proposed CIP, which will be presented to you at the beginning of May. And there is lots of
We're just on
information
track to continue our construction projects, and I think this speaks to that and provide, and additional information is actually provided on our website as well. Good. And the last one, just really a reminder of the work that we're doing as it relates to our policies and the revisions and new policies as well. So thank you for the opportunity, and we'll see if you have any questions or comments.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Colleagues, are there any questions or comments? I did have a quick question. I just wanted to ask, in our original elementary school planning communication flyer, we note a Friday Facebook Live video with new FAQs for tomorrow, December 6th. Is that still on track to happen? Okay, I don't think I saw that on the slide, so I just wanted to share that. Tomorrow, we will have the Friday Facebook Live video posted. Is that correct? Okay, great.
That is correct, and thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Van Doren.
It's not really a question, just I think it's useful always to start to remind people that the days are short and it's dark, and I was aware there were kids crossing near Route 50 yesterday when I was out walking my dog, and they should take safe routes, the bridges, not busy highways, and we should all be reminding our kids to do that. And there was ice on my back porch yesterday morning, so I remind everybody to be having their kids dressed warmly and have the appropriate shoes and things on for the inclement weather, because it's December. It may not feel like it every day, but it is. We're here. And especially the darkness, I think we have to be really cognizant of that.
Thank you very much for that reminder. It's about safety, so we really appreciate that.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Johnson. We are now at the consent agenda of our meeting. May I have a motion to adopt the consent agenda, please?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. And I'd like to announce that under the consent agenda, the board received the extended day brief. So if you have an opportunity, you can learn about what extended day has been doing over the last year. And do you have, Ms. O'Grady, you mentioned you may have a comment? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Talento. I just wanted to say that I was very actually happy to read through on the extended day report some encouraging things, which included the opportunity and the interest in extended day and looking at how it will be working with the lottery next year. There were some concerns about the lottery this year. In addition to that, I saw some really creative ideas for trying to figure out ways to expand extended day, because our students are interested and our families are interested in having more access. There's more interest than we have space for, but there were some very creative ways to look at potentially expanding that. They mentioned that there are some concerns about and some hurdles for trying to do that, but I was encouraged to see that we're going to be looking at ways to broaden that access, and I know there'll be a lot of parents who would be excited if we were able to do that. And I think it is a good thing for us to be looking at, especially since extended day is almost entirely self-supporting. At a time when we have some tight budget constraints, it's good to know that we can continue to help and serve students in a way that we can be fiscally responsible. So I want to thank the extended day staff and the executive leadership team for that report.
Thank you, Ms. O'Grady. We will now hear citizen comment on non-agenda items. Ms. Mercado, do we have speakers this evening? Okay, great. Before the speakers begin, I'll review the speaker guidelines. The school board welcomes public comment and allows comment at most regular board meetings. If you would like to speak but have not signed up electronically, you must submit a speaker slip to the clerk before the agenda item you wish to speak on is called. That would be now if you have not submitted your slip. Speakers are called in the order in which they signed up. However, if there are students who have signed up to speak, we invite them to speak first so they do not have to stay out too late on a school night. Each speaker may speak for up to 2 minutes, and there's a timer to help you keep track of your time. The timer begins when the speaker starts speaking, and you should conclude your remarks when the buzzer sounds. To ensure everyone has an opportunity to speak, the board has established the following guidelines. Any person with a disability who needs accommodation to provide public comment is requested to contact the school board office in advance of a meeting to request assistance. Any person who would like to have an interpreter provided to system is asked to contact the school board office in advance and will make every effort to provide interpretation. If a speaker addresses the board in a language other than English and has an interpreter with them, the speaker will have 2 minutes to speak, and the interpreter will have up to 2 additional minutes to translate the comments for the board. And speakers are also welcome to bring their own interpreters if they are not able to reach the school board office in advance. All comments should address matters related to Arlington Public Schools. Speakers should be courteous and address your comments to the entire school board. Generally, board members do not respond to public comments at meetings. If you have written comments, please give them to the clerk to distribute to the board. And we ask the audience to refrain from applauding, as that takes time away from our speakers. But you can applaud in sign language, so please be sure to state your name when you begin, and we welcome speakers to our meeting. Ms. Mercado.
First speaker, Chloe Liebman Morales.
She's so cute.
Hi, my name is Chloe Lightman Morales, and I am a third grader at third grade student at Arlington Traditional School. Thank you for the opportunity to share with you why my classmates and I benefit from the attending ATS, and that's why we benefit from the traditional school system. I enjoy the emphasis on reading, creating my community, being a good citizen, and following the golden rule. I have enjoyed having friends who live all over Arlington and those whose families from all over the world let me learn about the traditions from Bolivia, El Salvador, Mongolia, Japan, Ethiopia, and other countries. I enjoy the benefits from ATS and its traditional school system. Please keep the system in place. We are proud Blue Ribbon School. Please continue to make us a great school. It is good for us and good for all in Arlington. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Next speaker, James Graham.
Hello, I'm a third grader from ATS. My name is James Graham. I'm a classmate of Chloe's. I am from the Drew Elementary area. I would not like to move to ATS to McKinley because 42% of the people that go to ATS are in South Arlington. The move would upset the 42% of the people that go to ATS right now. It might make the 22% of ATS students that live in the most southern parts of Arlington have a better chance of being late. That might get them kicked out of school just because of where the school is. And that is not fair to the family that is late.
Thank you for your comments.
Next speaker, Cherise Kearns.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Cherise Kearns, and I'm co-chair of the NAACP Education Committee. I continue to be concerned about the hiring process for the Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer. I'm concerned mainly because key members of the community have been excluded from this process, namely Black, Latino, economically disadvantaged, and learning disabled families. While I understand that APS has a process for hiring and vetting candidates, this is a new and unique position that called for a new and unique process. An important part of equity is understanding who's missing, whose voices are missing, and trying to get those voices to the table. And I don't think that in this case, APS has done a good job of ensuring that the people who will be most significantly impacted by this are voices that have been heard. There are many families who will not see the survey that's posted up because they do not have internet access, and also because that has not been broadly communicated other than the internet. The advisory committees that are being permitted to interview are not diverse. The process to participate in ACI is a barrier. They put the form up and it's in English and it's in Spanish. It's not in Mongolian, it's not in Amharic, which means that those families don't have access. There are also limited translation services for ACI and the advisory committees. I think APS has missed an opportunity to show commitment to diversity, commitment to their core values. And we would like to see this process happen a little differently for the superintendent. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Next speaker, Jason Ramboz.
Members of the board, good evening. My name is Jason Ramboz. I'm a parent of a child at ATS. Thank you for taking time to consider input from the community relating to the two proposed options for elementary school movement. I'll be brief since I've kept my kids up past their bedtimes in order to be here, but I hope you'll agree that being engaged is worth a small sacrifice. As we are all aware, both current proposals involve moving Arlington Traditional School to the McKinley Elementary site. However, the April 12, 2018 school board work session, that work session, the board determined that McKinley was not a suitable site for countywide option school because it was not designed or equipped to accept the number of buses needed for a countywide option program. So I came here tonight to ask what's changed. Has the board been presented with new information contradicting the previous findings? To the best of my knowledge, none of the current materials relating to the school move proposals address this issue. Relatedly, there seems to be an assumption that commute times for busing ATS students will not increase from moving to the McKinley site. This appears to be based on an assumption that Route 50 and Route 7 are equivalent in traffic to George Mason Drive. Is there any objective data to back up this assumption? If no such data has been presented yet, then I urge the board not to approve either of these proposals. As they currently stand, they are incomplete and do not address serious transportation issues having to do with the McKinley site. Instead, I ask that you seek additional information or solicit further proposals. This is a very important decision impacting the lives of hundreds of students, families, and APS staff, and should be made very carefully. The board should have solid data to show that ATS as an option school will be successful at the new location. Otherwise, there is a risk that ATS may be forced to move again next year or the following year, thus requiring our children to move to 3 different locations in 6 years. As a parent, I am deeply troubled by the possibility of such an outcome. Once again, thank you very much for hearing from the community and seeking all relevant information before coming to a decision.
Thank you for your comments.
Simone Walker.
Good evening, Simone Walker from the NAACP Education Committee. Let's talk about irony. The process to hire a Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer lacks diversity, equity, and inclusivity, as well as transparency. The chosen community stakeholders permitted to participate in the panel interviews is limited to 1 person from 4 superintendent advisory groups, which is devoid of adequate representation of parents of students of color who have historically suffered low achievement in APS. Let's talk about barriers. The process to make it onto a superintendent's advisory committee also lacks diversity, equity, and inclusion. The applications are in English only. It requests work history and justification of qualifications, and is intimidating and complicated, essentially an intense written job application. Parents of marginalized students are neither courted nor encouraged to apply. For example, one parent activist has said, "This is indicative of the failure of APS to truly engage ELL parents with respect. The interpretation and translation services go to the website is only for staff. There is not a single link for parents to ask for assistance." Let's talk about lack of transparency. Confusion and conflicting information about the process for community stakeholder participation abounds. Key community groups outside of APS have no way of knowing this is happening tomorrow. The NAACP Education Committee has requested to participate, was promised by the school board that we could, yet is completely shut out of the process now. If APS cannot use an equity lens to be inclusive
Thank
of
you,
this
Ms. Walker,
process,
for your
then shame on
comments.
APS.
We appreciate you being here this evening. Thank you.
Alison Jimenez.
Good evening. I've been watching over the last couple years as APS staff repeatedly recommended removing the Spanish immersion program from Key School, first to Arlington Science Focus and now to either Carlin Springs or ATS. And I find myself asking why. What problem is APS staff trying to solve? The problem seems to be current and projected overcrowding in the Rosalind-Boston corridor, or APS's Zone 2. The idea seems to be that by removing immersion from Key School, APS will find 653 neighborhood seats. However, upon a closer look, this is far from reality. This idea is based upon the assumption that the patterns of student applications for rising cohorts of elementary students to immersion in its new location will mirror the application patterns at Key. Yet in the same vein, APS staff repeatedly state that students apply to option schools close to where they live. These ideas are contradictory. The reality is that the immersion program at Key School is already providing much-needed seats for Zone 2 students. As per last year's transfer report, 72%, or 493 of Key's students reside in Zone 2. Again, immersion at Key is already providing much-needed seats for Zone 2. The question now becomes, after the initial move, when families invested in the immersion program may make every effort to move with the program, does APS expect families from Zone 2 to apply to immersion in another location in the same large numbers that they apply to Key? This seems unlikely. APS should expect that the applications from the Rosalind-Ballston corridor will drop substantially. Yet, the students will still reside in Zone 2 and will still need to be educated by APS. The result will be more Zone 2 neighborhood students and less Zone 2 immersion students. The students will still be going to school in the area. Seats will not open up, and students in the area will have lost access to an immersion education. Removing the program will not create more seats. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments.
Next speaker, Monica Day. Next speaker, Rebecca Hunter.
Hi, good evening. My name is Rebecca Hunter, and I am here to ask for your help regarding the wonderful and with high potential Arlington Tech program. I know that the Arlington Tech, there is a piece of it on the agenda under the high school program of studies, but I put my request to speak in during this time because really this is a much broader issue than just the one that's going to be raised tonight under the program of studies. And I really wanted to start with what Carolyn Jackson just said earlier tonight. She says APS is for all learners. And I would like to say Arlington Tech should be for all learners. And right now, that is not the way that it is really being established. And Arlington Tech, the vision of Arlington Tech that was when it was adopted and the possibilities, even here, the Arlington Tech infinite possibilities, it does, but it really must be managed and shepherded through these initial years to really incorporate all of those values that we as APS parents and community members and stakeholders really hold dear. One of the other topics that we're here talking about tonight is diversity and equity and inclusion. Yet we have a program that has been created that is specifically exclusionary. And I think it's the only program that I can think of that is specifically supported and to be exclusive, right? We are not being welcoming and open to students with disabilities and with special needs. We're restricting their ability to be welcomed into the Arlington Tech community by requiring algebra to be done by the 8th grade and now having a double block of math that is not proven to be successful for any of these kids that may be challenged in a math environment. I would also like to say that overall, with the multiple pathways and the policies that Arlington and this community are looking at should be incorporated into Arlington Tech.
Thank you, Ms. Hunter, for your comments.
There are no more speakers.
Thank you, Ms. Mercado. Thank you all for coming this evening to speak. We appreciate it.
Yeah, I just want to make a comment following the speakers. We heard one of the speakers talk about promises from the board. A couple of meetings ago, we heard another speaker talk about promises from the board. I want to remind everybody that commitments from the school board are made at this table by a majority vote in public. And if that didn't happen, then that is the way that commitments from the board are made clear to the community. So I don't actually recall a vote promising anything. And if I'm incorrect on that, somebody please tell me when and where it was. Thank you.
We are now at our monitoring item. Our monitoring item is an update on our School and Community Relations Department. Ms. Johnson, would you please reintroduce this item?
Yes, I would like to introduce Catherine Ashby, and I'd like to thank her for the work that she's done in leadership and her department as well, and she'll present the report.
Thank you. I'm Catherine Ashby, Interim Assistant Superintendent for School and Community Relations. I want to thank the school board, Interim Superintendent Cynthia Johnson, the ELT, for the opportunity to share an update on the work of my department. I also want to acknowledge that I have some colleagues here for support tonight. Dulce Carrillo, Daryl Johnson, and Frank Bellavia, thank you for coming. Here's an overview of what I'm going to share tonight, an overview of our team and the work that we do, some good news highlights backed by data that align with the strategic plan, and then how we're moving forward based on what we've learned over the past year. Concluded by some bright spots. This is an overview of our department. We're a staff of 13 full-time. That includes one vacancy for the Director of Communications while I'm fulfilling this interim role. We have 5 coordinators that focus on specific important areas, including media relations, family engagement, community outreach, website and design. I think I skipped volunteers and special events. That's very important as well. We also have a 4-person video production team and a print shop that's managed by one person, and it oversees all of the printing and publications for the school division. Our primary goal as a department is to strengthen communications both within APS as well as between APS and the community. And we do that by serving as a centralized source of information and advising the departments and schools to execute their communications initiatives. All of our work supports the mission goals and work of the 2018-24 strategic plan. Our core services, you can see here the full list. We have a wide array of ways that we connect with the community, and you can see all the platforms that we manage here. Through each of these services, we support the mission and goals of the strategic plan in really 4 main ways: celebrating students in the many different ways they learn and grow, keeping our families informed, engaging our community, our partners, and our volunteers, and last but not least is connecting with staff. And I'm going to share a little bit more about how we do that. There's a lot of good news out of our department. Over the past 2 years since the last monitoring report was presented, we've introduced many new tools and resources to streamline our communications and expand community engagement. We launched an intranet at the start of this year, which is the first staff-only website for connecting with staff. We've expanded our social media reach and engagement. And the Your Voice Matters survey that was conducted in 2018 shows that many of our families have a positive view of our communications. 91% know how to get answers to questions. These are positive results that we can build on, but we can do more. Our goal is, of course, 95%. And we look forward to the next Your Voice Matters survey will be conducted at the beginning of 2020. And we look forward to seeing how we've grown and against this benchmark. On the next slides, I'm going to share more about these good news pieces aligned with the strategic plan goals. So while the majority of the work that School and Community Relations does connects to partnerships and family engagement, everything connects back to goals 1 and 2, supporting student success and well-being. That's really the heart of what we do. And here you can see a few of the images and ways that we're sharing, recognizing student success and also providing, just celebrating the many ways that they're succeeding. One example on the slide that you see is the #APSGrad19 campaign we launched this year, highlighting graduates from all the different high schools throughout June and their stories and their paths to success. You can also see next to that image a student holding her winning entry for the MLK contest from last year. So we really try to highlight student success in everything we do. And on this slide, you'll see a few of the ways we're celebrating student success online, through social media, through video, and through a recent podcast series that we launched. The main theme here is growth. All of the channels are growing. All of these different paths for families to get information are growing. And while not everyone's online, we do have a large following, and it is a good way to build connections and also to hear and see what the community is saying and to monitor conversation. In terms of media production and video, our AETV team does excellent work. They've increased production as well as the range of topics that we cover. Our focus right now is on mental health and well-being and capturing all the resources available within APS. And you can see that the viewership has also grown. In terms of partnerships and connecting with families, the number one way that we engage in two-way dialogue around initiatives is the Engage with APS platform. Since that launched in 2017, we've seen growth, and we've continued to use it as a central platform for connecting around major initiatives like the elementary planning initiative that's underway now. So it's been a great way to address misinformation that we're seeing and ensure people have accurate information and ways to submit questions, submit feedback, and encourage two-way dialogue. APS School Talk is our main platform for pushing messages out, and we've seen, we receive above industry average open rates on our messages. Last year we introduced APS Friday 5 based on feedback from the community that they were simply overwhelmed by the number of messages they were receiving. Can you please prioritize? So we took that feedback and that's what we did, and the open rates, we've received a lot of positive feedback on that in terms of centralizing messages. And the only note on the website is that we've seen 43% growth in terms of page views and visits over the past 3 years. I just shared a lot about online communications, and as Nancy has recently reminded me, we are a face-to-face community first, and we do a lot of face-to-face engagement within school and community relations in partnership with other departments. And a lot of our engagement with the community is focused on limited English-speaking families. The Engage 101 workshops that we began in 2018-19 have allowed us to provide hands-on training for a lot of families to show them how we're communicating, to get connected to those channels, to show them how to sign up for text alerts. So that's been a successful way that we've continued to build on for reaching a variety of families. And in addition, information nights and events. Our department plans 3 of those a year. They're big events. They're very well attended for helping families prepare for those transitions for kindergarten, middle school, and high. And we've been able to increase the number of families that have access to that information through live streaming. So you can see the increase on the slide. In terms of volunteer and partners, our department does a lot of work in terms of recruitment and screening to build partnerships with businesses and nonprofit organizations that support a variety of learning experiences for our students. There's a lot of work yet to be done in this area as we look to build internships and work-based learning experiences that really do broaden those learning opportunities. So our department's doing a lot of work with teaching and learning on that, and we look forward to the partnership coordinator position. But just backing up for a second in terms of our volunteer recruitment. At the start of this year, we launched a new application process that aligns with the visitor management system to improve safety and also to better track and manage the number of volunteers. And we have trained staff at all the schools on this new process and have 5,000 active volunteers that have been registered since September. So this tells us a lot of good news. Families want to support the schools, they want to be involved, and so we're happy to have this data captured now and aligned in a safe, to be able to ensure the safety of our students as well. You can see we have 500 business and nonprofit partners that we're tracking. Those include resource, service, and strategic. Strategic partners are those that have actually signed agreements with us to support us in a variety of ways over time. And I've included a few of those most recent partners that have signed agreements with us. An engaged workforce. Our team supports, has done more and more work around employee engagement and making sure that that our staff have the information that they need. So I mentioned the launch of Staff Central, the first employee-only website, and we have received a lot of positive feedback from staff and seen a lot of page views, and this is a great tool for us to continue connecting with staff. In addition to communications with staff, we're focused on training. Over the past year, we did more training for administrators, executive assistants on communications tools, on ways to engage effectively. We had 10 sessions aimed at principals and on topics ranging from crisis communications to how to effectively use school talk. We also provide resources along the same lines, and then we manage a liaison program to really move us from being a system of schools to a unified school system. The liaison programs for PR, for volunteer and partners, and web allow us to ensure a consistent unified message. And then lastly, our department contributes to operational excellence by helping to continuously look at ways to be more efficient in our communications, to conserve resources, and ultimately also reduce costs. We spearheaded the annual online verification process this year, and to enable families to verify their students' information through parent view versus on paper for the first time. And you can see that we've been able to capture, we've gone from 39% to 74% participation, which is good news, and saved money in the process as well. We have a debrief on that process scheduled for tomorrow to look at ways to improve it and to make it even more accessible for all families, looking at things like an app for people's phones and things like that. So I'll have more to share on that. Peach Jar is just another way that many schools have embraced Peach Jar as an electronic flyer system that has also allowed us to conserve resources and money. So those were a few of the highlights, and then moving forward, I'm just going to touch on a few things that we're focused on in the year ahead and currently. So in 2017, a department audit was done by an external firm, and they made 13 specific recommendations. And I'm pleased to report that 75% of those 13 recommendations are either in process or have been fulfilled. But there are 4 specific areas of focus that I want to touch on. We're continuing to work on increasing engagement with our limited English-speaking families. That continues to be a priority, and we've heard that talked about tonight. One of the strategies for doing that is continue coordinating with and collaborating with the Office of English Learners. So we're looking at ways to expand our translations into the top 5 languages, to assess our vital documents and make sure that we're doing that and that we're providing, continuing to strengthen how we're connecting with all of our communities. Second is improving our communication around controversial issues. We do a lot of listening. I didn't get to this on that slide, but we listen. We monitor our community and the feedback that we're getting online. And we know that we can always improve, and we stay flexible and we try to adjust. If something seems unclear, we're always looking to expand and find new ways to clarify our message and to connect with our communities. One way that we're doing this is through the work with the Planning and Evaluation Department around the current elementary school planning initiative, and really developing a plan that has built in many opportunities for the community to engage both online and in person. And then third, strengthening employee voice. I've mentioned this, but our work around Staff Central and the ability, it allows us the ability to improve our communications and make sure employees have a centralized place for accessing forms and information. So we'll continue to build on that. And then we're also working with our emergency manager to pilot an emergency messaging system. And then fourth, communicating the APS mission. There's been a lot of discussion tonight from the students and also by the school board around mental health and wellness for students. So a lot of our communications efforts and our proactive engagement is going to focus on mental health and wellness and the resources that students can access. So we look forward to doing more stories and sharing resources around that. What we learned from the development of this report is that we are making good progress toward the benchmarks for the strategic plan and toward our own goals as a department. Division-wide communications continue to evolve. There's really not a fixed solution. We just have to continue to adapt our approaches and make sure we're connecting with all of our student groups and all of our families. Having good information and data is important. We did a lot of work with planning and evaluation on the Your Voice Matters survey questions to make sure the information we're getting this round is going to be actionable and really, truly valuable and helpful. So we sat down with families and talked about the questions and did some focus groups for that. So we want to continue to improve those surveys and the information that we're getting from families. I think that's not a few bright spots. We had 5 school openings this year, and just in the fall, and we organized 5 events with the community, and it was just an exciting way to start the year. That was a big deal to open 5 schools, and these events allowed us to welcome everyone in, we had the students involved, and those were just very feel-good ways to start the year. And I've already mentioned it, but the best part of the job for school and community relations is celebrating the success that's happening, not just student success, but staff success. And this year we launched 2 new campaigns online, Teacher Tuesday and our Spotlight on Leadership, as ways to continue to recognize our staff. And then, if I've not talked too long, we do have a quick video. We are the video team. So, and I do want to acknowledge that we have a video team member in the back. We always have someone in the booth from AETV. Last year, I think I said we covered 65 board meetings and work sessions. So they're here, and they put together a little highlight reel. Play that real quick.
Call our emergency hotline at 703-228-4277 for our operating status.
There it is. Came out pretty nice, huh?
¿Qué es esto? ¿Estudio de niño?
Déjalas tranquilas, por favor.
¿Y este que solo habla?
Which includes the creative thinking, the critical thinking, the collaboration, communication, and citizenship.
From the very moment I got here and talking to kids and adults, the fact that the animals of the school make people a different kind of person here.
today at what was once Stratford Junior High School, Virginia's first racially integrated school. The long battle to integrate Virginia's public schools followed the U.S. Supreme Court's decision in 1954's Brown versus the Board of Education.
Any questions?
Thank you for the presentation, Ms. Ashby. It was really great. We really appreciate it, and I think we will have some questions and comments from the board. Colleagues, would anyone like to start? Ms. Van Doren?
I just really want to...
I'm sorry, I forgot to ask for speakers. Are there any speakers? Okay.
I just really want to thank you, Ms. Ashby, and the entire team who's here tonight. When I began on the board 5 years ago, this was one of the main topics of 2 of our retreats. And I remember the consultant who came in and the groundwork that was laid, and so much has happened. People take Engage, for example, for granted. That's not. People take being able to access the website and get information via the website for granted. That's not the case. So I'm very impressed. And having had 4 kids, and when I first got here, getting 4 first day packets, all of which I had to fill out with all the paperwork, and every single one of them had a program of studies in it. While I know we have a lot of challenges helping people get up to speed on using the computers and going to the schools and doing it electronically, it saves so much time and energy. And I remember forgetting by the end of the year who I put down for my emergency contact. I didn't have access to what was written down. So now we can go in and look at that on a regular basis. So yes, we have a ways to go, but most people have cell phones, so I do hope that we find a way to allow people to access it that way. But I just really wanted to thank you. And also, I want to thank your team for their boldness in entering on social media websites and correcting information. I bite my fingers sometimes because I want to get in there and snip something in the bud, and your team bravely does that. And I want to thank them for doing that because it just saves everybody time and energy from spreading misinformation. And if you get on those sites, we do it. And I really want to thank you because that's bold. And thank you. So just thank you across the board. Thank you to all of you for the work you're doing. It's really appreciated.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Ms. Van Doren. Dr. Cannon, do you have any questions or comments?
Yes, thank you. You really are doing a lot, I agree. And things like the Engage page and Friday 5, the initiatives that you brought forward are really, a lot has changed. It's great to see. I want to ask a couple of different things. First, I want to talk about the partnership program. And we, as you mentioned, we are hiring a new partnership coordinator, if that's the title. That person, I believe, we're putting in teaching and learning. And I think a part of that job is going to be about internships, you know, developing student opportunities for, with our community businesses and other places. And I guess I'm curious, since you're already kind of in that world, how you all see that, what you see happening as next steps as we get that person online.
Sure. And in preparation, I appreciate that question. And in preparation for that, we've been collaborating very closely with Teaching and Learning, with Ty Bird, with Chris Martini. We've started doing some of the work. We're not waiting for that position to happen. So we're already collaborating very closely and looking ahead. We're looking at the framework for how we're approaching internships and work-based learning partnerships. That Career Center has done a tremendous amount of work on that, and that has not really been the focus of school and community relations and the type of partnerships. Our focus has been on partners through the schools and through our liaison program that provide resources to schools, donation of books that provide mentoring in schools, and also other services. So it's different. So I think we'll be continuing to work with the new partnership coordinator in whatever department they are in. We worked with Ty Bird on the description for that position so that it aligns nicely with the work that we're already doing. I think there will be some work to do once that person starts, just to make sure that we have a broad strategy and that we're continuing to coordinate.
It can be confusing for community members as well when they're working with different departments. So, I mean, I guess as long as you're all just staying in contact and making sure that everyone knows which conversations they're having at any point in time. Do you know what I mean? Like you're saying, like your role with partners, you might be working with them on a program, whereas they might also be
might
wanting
also
an
provide
internship, a student opportunity.
Yes. So we'll have to make sure all of that is aligned. I see what you mean in terms of how making sure that's clear to our community in how that's organized. So we'll be working with that person and with teaching and learning to make sure.
And my other question is about, and you mentioned surveys and that you're involved with them, but we do quite a number of surveys, and they come from different departments. And I think one of the speakers, I think, talked about an HR survey for one of the positions. We have the school calendar. I know we have program moves, and last year we had other surveys on different. I think we did one on the one-to-one study. We do a lot of surveys, and surveys by definition communicate to people whether they are coming from your office or not. It is a way that people are exposed to our thinking and our work. And as you mentioned, community is a little exhausted with a lot of the engagement we're doing. So I guess I'm curious if you have thought about that as a problem, because we do hear that from our community, and they're concerned about sometimes the quality of the surveys as well as the quantity. And if there's anything that you have thought about what we could do.
I have. We've done a lot of talking with the Department of Planning and Evaluation. I'm not sure I mentioned that our department does work closely with planning and evaluation, specifically on Engage and on a lot of initiatives. So I wasn't sure if I mentioned that in my presentation, but we know that we need to improve that process. There does need to be more advanced planning and alignment around the number of surveys. We've done some of that work. So Your Voice Matters, part of Your Voice Matters was to address part of that problem, because there were previously 3 or 4 surveys, and that combined all of those into one. So I think we're going to be looking to do more of that, and also just, I agree that it's overwhelming for families, so making sure there's advanced planning, that we're really looking at the calendar for all of these things, and that there's proper time to really review and assess the message being sent with the survey. So we're doing work around all of that. I hear exactly what you're saying, and I think it is an area for continued review and building into the future.
So just to clarify then, because again, you're all sort of equal departments, who's overseeing and taking the leadership role on making sure that there's oversight on all the surveys?
That is more of a planning and evaluation role that we're supporting. So that is a planning and evaluation. Many departments are overseeing, so I agree, I see what you're saying. Many departments are pushing out surveys, but planning and evaluation is the primary department overseeing. Maybe Lisa wants to address that.
Sorry.
Come on up with me.
So it is something that we need to look at. We actually, a lot of times, find out towards the end of a process when a survey's ready to go out that it's happening. So we need to get sort of oversight of what's on the calendar, where it's going. We've done some work with the internal ones that we know. Your Voice Matters actually combines what used to be the assets and the community satisfaction surveys. Some of the other ones we still need to get a hold of, and that's going to take time. And we've raised it at different points. I think we just have to make sure everybody's getting the same message.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you. Mr. Goldstein, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I really enjoyed the highlight reel. Is there a blooper reel also?
There is, but I didn't bring that tonight.
Can I, is it available for sale?
Sure.
Okay. I got one question. At the start of school board meetings, they kind of all look the same, and then, the end kind of all looks the same, and the difference is that there's a lot of people in the beginning and nobody at the end. I think I'm seeing fewer people attending the work sessions and other things that we televise and live stream and stuff. But I can't actually tell how many people are, tuning into our processes. Do you have a sense, because I know you can count who's tuned in and not. Do you have a sense if the community viewership or the community awareness, participation in, our public meetings is growing, declining, staying the same?
I'd have to analyze that information a little bit closer, but I believe that it varies depending on the topics covered in the meeting. There are some meetings where there is a significant amount of online viewership depending on the topic, and you can probably anticipate which ones will drive more interest just based on the feedback we're hearing. But there's a wide variation even in some of the work sessions in terms of who's tuning in. But I can get more specifics to you. I just have to pull those numbers.
Well, that's actually what kind of piqued my interest, because I remember a work session where there was almost nobody here, but afterwards I heard from people, you said this, I heard that, I saw this at the work session. So clearly people are tuning in from home. I just kind of, wondering how many.
Right. I'll let you know. I'll pull that information.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. O'Grady?
Thank you, Ms. Ashby and your team for your hard work. And we have a lot of demands in our community, and people do like to be informed. And I appreciate the way that we reach out in many different channels to reach our parent community, whether it's on the web, via social media, through video, and through the ability for them to be able to watch meetings after and they're at home in their slippers. I wanted to ask you, though, there's another aspect of that I think is playing an important role, and that's our school liaisons. And just wanted you to be able to talk about the importance of their role as well as a face-to-face tool to also be able to share the information from on the ground at our schools.
Yes. Thank you for asking that. Our liaisons do incredible work, and it's the work they do is really important. So just in terms of our process for PR liaisons, we share information every Monday with them, so a calendar of what we're pushing out and what important messages there are to convey, and every liaison has a different approach to how they share that with their community based on their community. So it is really important, the work that they're doing. They take the information and make it relevant to their community based on what they're hearing. So I can't state enough how important our liaison program and the work that our liaisons are doing. And that's just the PR liaisons, but also volunteer and partner liaisons. They are the interface with the parents who are showing up to volunteer or to chaperone a field trip and making that happen, ensuring they have all the proper forms completed. So we work very, very closely with them in terms of training on an ongoing basis throughout the year.
And thank you, Chair Talento, who reminded me that perhaps the appropriate terminology would be ambassadors.
Yes.
Our school ambassadors as opposed to liaisons. And then I also want to ask, are they also an important tool to you for receiving information? Is there two-way communication?
Yes. One point of clarification is that the ambassador program is handled by Kathy Minberg and the planning and evaluation team. She does great work with the ambassador program and really started that, and it has been an incredibly valuable tool. There is two-way dialogue, so the ambassadors were one of the first groups that we connected with around the elementary planning initiative because we wanted to hear their feedback, we wanted to hear their perspective, and also to have them share the messages and the information about the planning process. So that's just one example, but yes, it is definitely a two-way.
So there are two opportunities, the ambassadors and liaisons.
Yes, so they're different. We have an ambassador for each school that helps specifically around planning initiatives and communicating and sharing those messages. And then our liaisons are there to both share information with us about what's happening in their school so that we can share it division-wide, and also to carry messages from the division to their school and staff. So,
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. O'Grady. Reed, you must have real good connections with those liaisons when you have all this information about your schools that you bring to the board meeting. I'm gonna have to get connected to our school liaisons. I do have a few questions, and I want to apologize that I was not able to. I know we try to share them as early as possible so that staff can be prepared to respond. So if you don't have answer, please just, I'm happy to have a follow-up. I just did not have the opportunity to do that. The first comment that I have is really, I think, going to be addressed to our interim superintendent, Ms. Johnson. I wanted to discuss our FACE, the Family and Community Engagement. They used to live under the Department of Teaching and Learning, and then they were moved under the English Learner Department. I've heard concerns about that, and I don't know if that was done specifically to help address the Title I money that supports that program. But the reason I bring that up is because I do believe that we need to consider moving FACE under School and Community Relations, or somehow really working on that, because I was appreciating what Ms. Ashby shared regarding their efforts to improve community engagement with non-English speaking families. And FACE does work on that, but FACE should also work on other community engagement. So I just wanted to share that, that I think that's something we need to consider. And I don't know what the capacity is under your department, but we just need to really have the discussion on how we're using FACE to support what School and Community Relations does, and is FACE in the right place? Because I don't know if it is.
So I'd like to just acknowledge the concern that you're sharing with us. It has been shared previously, and I think it is something that we need to revisit, and the staff will be doing that. I think once we have some systems, once we have our our assistant superintendent for DTL, I think this is one of the areas we're trying to come back to.
Okay, great. And however that is, I imagine you'll be working closely with them, but I just wanted to provide that feedback, or that thought. The other thing, I wanted to follow up on what Dr. Cannon shared about the partnerships. One of the challenges that I hear as a school board member is that we get a lot of nonprofit and community organizations that come to the school board trying to figure out how to get involved in our schools. And I don't know where to go with this. We have a possible partnership coordinator coming online that appears to be focusing on internships. We have the School and Community Relations who has partners in the schools, but it doesn't seem to mend this place where if we have a nonprofit that wants to provide a service to our schools, they have to go to each school and create an agreement with that principal to volunteer in their school, versus coming to central office and saying, I want to provide services to your Title I schools in reading. I want to provide services to outdoor learning for, 5 elementary schools, and that's our capacity. We have an opportunity through where your office is growing and the partnership coordinator to figure out how to close that loop, because when we talk about wraparound services and supporting our system, and even finding ways to save dollars, that is a way that we can do it. And with this new partnership coordinator, I know it was discussed in a work session last year, but I just want to bring that back up as we're discussing school and community relations. You have work in a partnership, as you mentioned, but it does not go to that level of organization and managing partnerships and how they work in our schools. Is that correct?
Our current partnership coordinator, Dawn Smith, who also oversees volunteers and special events, she is a point of contact that serves as a resource for companies, for nonprofits, for other organizations that are interested in partnering with the schools. So she maintains a list of opportunities that she hears through the volunteer and partner liaison network that we've built, so she can help facilitate those connections, but a lot of times it's taking those opportunities, reaching out to the network we've established through the liaison program. So we have access to all the coordinators for each school and finding out where there are needs and trying to make a match that way. So that's how it's currently happening.
Okay.
If those relationships, a lot of them are built directly with the principals, but if they're coming through that way, that is currently the best resource. Don Smith does great work in making those connections.
So then maybe I need help in it, because when the organizations come to speak at open office hours or something, I don't know where to direct them.
Okay.
And when they, my understanding is when they, in the past, and the past could be a long past, it might not be recent, have reached out to school and community relations, they're saying, well, you can provide us information and we'll share it. They're not connected to a person who can work with them to implement a wraparound service that they could provide. And they've had to go to schools specifically to work with the principals, and like some like our Aspire, Phoenix Bikes, Reeveland Outdoor Learning, they work with the schools directly, where they may want to provide services to more of our schools. So I just share that for feedback.
Thank you.
And then finally, just another piece that I know is discussed, I wonder if we just need to consider getting a survey consultant at some point in the future when funds allow, to really help manage our surveys, because we have been hearing feedback about concerns about how our surveys are meeting the needs of people who are taking them, and are they really providing APS the data that we seek. So that's just a comment. The other thing that I want to ask, and this is my last question, goes to the volunteer sign-up process, and this coincides along with the AOVP work that you did. The prior to this year, the volunteer sign-up was a lot less, there was a lot less to do to become a volunteer in our schools, or the form was a lot easier from what I've heard. It was a more basic form than the new form that we're asking our volunteers to provide. Did we track data last year, or is this the first year we're able to track data as to how many volunteers we have?
This is the first year I feel like we have really accurate, reliable information. The system that we've set up allows us to do that. And we actually, I understand that that's the perception, and maybe I need to look into this, the experience people are having. But we actually removed a number of layers from the application.
This is what I had heard in the beginning of the year.
In the beginning.
But we
So
haven't
again,
discussed.
listening,
Okay, perfect.
adapting. We removed several layers that were perceived as barriers for completing that. The application really does take about 5 minutes.
Excellent.
It's actually the same procedure we were following before. It's just a different way of doing it. And the Safe Schools training is a second part of that is a requirement.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for that information and for working with the community. I know that it is a concern that they had shared early on, so I'm glad to hear it. And so the next is just a comment. I just wanted to share that when we worked on to get the high percentage of AOVP work, which is, I can't remember what it stands for, but it's the online verification process, right? I know that there was a lot of school and volunteer manpower that was put in place, so as you discuss that tomorrow, if we could consider that. I know there was a lot of community leaders that I worked with and spoke to who were really making efforts to reach out to community members in the immigration community to make sure they were coming out to these work sessions, working with the school principal or bilingual resource liaison to get these happening. And so I just want, as you all discuss that work tomorrow, to consider how we, if that is what we're going to need to do next year, how do we support our volunteers and our schools to really get to the numbers that we did this year and prepare our principals in the schools that have that kind of need to support them, so that they know they're going to be having to put in that extra piece. And then finally, I just want to say thank you for the opening ceremonies. As chair, I attended every single one. And I know that we did a big thanks to John Chadwick and his staff for the Herculean effort they did. But I think that I did fail to recognize that your team was at every single one with 6+ huge scissors for ribbon cuttings, different colored ribbons that coordinated with each new school opening. You were working with the ATV crew to have the sound check and to have everything in place. We had special guests at all of our ceremonies who had the opportunity to speak And I got to tell you, you would not have known the effort it took to put that together. And it was all within 5 weeks, because I know that I didn't have a weekend off, which means you all did not have a weekend off. And I just wanted to really just say a special thanks to you and your team. I think I saw every one of you at some point in at least 2 ceremonies that we did. I know that the ATV crew was there, wrapping up the mics, being there before the ceremony started, wrapping up afterwards. There were no hiccups when we presented, when we spoke, and when we cut those ribbons. And I just wanted to really say thank you for that on behalf of the board, for all the work that you did alongside John Chadwick and his team to really make those openings really wonderful this year. So thank you for that.
Thank you, and I again have to give a shout out to Dawn Smith for,
Oh my
she's
gosh.
not here, but
Yes.
she did incredible work making each of those events a little bit unique and appropriate for the school, so I just wanted to acknowledge
It
that.
was noticeable, and she was amazing. So thank you. Thank you all. Okay. Thank you, colleagues. I think we're now going to move on to action. Oh, I just want to make sure there were no more comments or questions. Okay. We are, what? Okay. We have 3 action items tonight. So first, we will act on the retirement of 4 school board policies. Ms. Johnson, will you please introduce this item?
So I'll invite Mr. Zach Pope to the podium.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. So we're here tonight to talk about the retirement of 4 school board policies as a result of the updates done by staff to policy E-3.31, health and safety, now renamed safety and security. Those policies are as follows: E2, E2.1, E2.2, and I-10.31. All of these have been moved language-wise in terms of their content in order to better protect our school vulnerabilities, modernize those, and address all of the ever-changing needs of our safety and security.
Thank you, Mr. Pope. Do we have any speakers? Okay. Colleagues, are there any comments on this item? I have one, but I have, after speakers, invite board comment on item, then we do the motion, and then we do questions. Will we do questions or comments? Do we have any? Okay, I just wanted to share that I have some concerns about retiring all 4 of these policies, and I will speak to that. I will speak to that now, and then we can call the motion, and I believe there is some consideration on tabling the motion because of the concerns that I've shared with my colleagues.
Ms. Talento, I should do the motion first,
Okay.
and then you can make comments.
Okay, that's fine.
Does that?
Yep, that's fine. I will take the advice of 2
Okay,
former chairs, and so please.
Yeah, I have a motion. I move that the board retire the following school board policies: E2, emergency and disaster planning; E2.1, school safety audits and security; E2.2, threat assessment team; and I-10.31, counseling crisis management.
Is there a second? Thank you, Monique.
Second.
Is there a discussion or questions?
Madam Chair, I'd like to introduce a motion to table this for a future board meeting, and I can explain why, but I'll need a second on that motion to table.
Okay. Is there a second to table the motion?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay. Mr. Goldstein, a second. Thank you, Mr. Goldstein.
Would you like me to explain why now, or would you like to speak
Well,
first?
I mean, I have very specific reasons why, but you're asking.
Well, I put the motion forward.
Okay. All right. So, I apologize for the Robert Rules process.
Please.
But there's a process, and I know that you put these policies forward to retire because of the work that you did last spring, as early as March, that went through July. And I
Correct.
recognize it was a huge amount of work. There are many policies that were consolidated. I have reviewed the 4 policies that you want to retire. I recognize that policy E-2 and E-2.1, there was language that was put in policy E-3.31 that
Correct.
addresses what was addressed in those policies. So I'm okay with retiring that. I've shared this discussion with my colleagues. I had the time to research E-2.2 and I-10.31, which is the threat assessment team and the counseling crisis management. And I do have concerns about retiring those two policies for a variety of reasons. One is in the threat assessment team, there's by state code we're required to have a policy on that. And the threat assessment team is referenced in the PIP to E-3.31, not in the policy. So I believe there's a motion to table this, and so if we table it, we can discuss on how to address that. And I recognize that you had mentioned at our last board meeting that the state is looking to change that, but it's still in code now, and it would require action from the General Assembly, is my understanding.
So what I stated last meeting is actually that threat assessment, if you take a sample of what our neighboring school divisions have done, is, for instance, Fairfax, instead of using the language of PIP, they use regulation. They have done all of that to satisfy the code requirements for DCJS as part of that second level, and DCJS has recognized that as meeting the state code requirement. So that is why it was moved to PIP 1 as threat assessment and removed from a policy.
Well, and I appreciate that. I appreciate that our neighboring counties do excellent work, but I think we do excellent work here as well.
Absolutely.
And the state code states that it should be in policy, and the DCJS is not the General Assembly. So I'm a stickler for that kind of stuff, as my colleagues will tell you. So for me, and I think that one of the reasons that it's being tabled is they want to really discuss this and have an understanding.
Absolutely.
That is not something that I could support at this time until the General Assembly states that they don't need us to put it in policy. And I also do remember this policy being created because we were working on the SRMOU where it was referenced, and when I was on that subcommittee work for the board, and I spoke directly with Dr. Murphy about this threat assessment team policy because it had just come into law at that time. The code actually describes a lot of what is in our threat assessment team policy, and I want to make sure that we are following that kind of work. So I think we just need further discussion if we do want to delete this policy and determine where it's going to live, and have that discussion. Regarding the counseling crisis management, we have a crisis management plan that is also addressed in the PIP, but it does not discuss counseling, and I am concerned regarding the mental health issues that we have. So I also researched our emergency management plan that we have provided.
Absolutely.
And I did not see that in there. So we have a crisis management plan. The counseling piece may be part of that, but considering where we are, I want to make sure that the counseling crisis management portion is something that everyone knows about, is in policy, and people can be researched. So I'm one board member. I shared this with my colleagues, and I think that my understanding is there's consideration for more time to discuss all of this. So I just wanted to share the work that I had done and why I was bringing this forward. And
So with that understanding, we will have an opportunity for further discussion and bring it back.
okay. And there's a motion on the table to table this. Are there any other comments or questions on this?
May I speak?
Yes.
That would be great, thank you. Hi, Zach, we worked extensively on this last year, and I think we need a little bit more time to crosswalk what we're doing. And as Ms. Talento said, we tend to be quite picky to make sure we abide by code, and there's a distinct difference between the policies and the PIPs. PIPs are not approved by the board, policies are. So what we need to have in policy, we need to have in policy. And I think this won't take a lot of time, but we spent a lot
Absolutely, we
of
can
time
do
together. And Ms. Johnson, I offer to take the time to do that again because I think it was very fruitful. So with that, I'd love to vote on the table so that we can move back to the motion.
Any other comments or questions? Go ahead, Ms. Dr. Kennedy.
Just want to mention that the kinds of concerns that are being raised, frankly, we should just ask for a legal review from our outside counsel.
Okay.
That's it.
Thank you. So can we act on the motion to table this motion? Yep. All in favor to table the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes 5-0. We will table it and will require further discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next action item is the middle school and high school program of studies. This item came to the board for action at our last meeting, but the vote resulted in a tie due to the absence of a board member. In compliance with board policy, we are bringing it back to be voted on again tonight. Ms. Johnson, would you please introduce the presentation?
Yes, I'd like to introduce Mr. Tyrone Bird. He's going to provide an update on the program of study.
Good evening, everyone. Let me preface our conversation this evening by saying thank you to the school board members and to my colleagues on the ELT and in the Department of Teaching and Learning. We really appreciate the level of scrutiny that has been offered for this because it shows that it's important. This is important, both that we have a conversation about the merits of the curriculum that we're offering and also about how we need to be financially responsible with regard to the courses that we're offering. So we've been allowed to be ambitious, which was my request at our previous meeting. That has been allowed throughout this conversation, and then we're now trying to also be financially responsible as we move forward. So thanks for that. So tonight we're going to just continue our conversation, which has been ongoing since November 7th, when I brought this for information, and then back for action again. So we're going to continue our conversation, and again, thanks for the feedback that you've offered us throughout this conversation. You asked me to bring some information with regard to our new English course, the storytelling class, and here is some demographic information regarding our courses, the course across our middle schools. All middle schools are offering it except for H.B. Woodlawn. They chose not to offer because there wasn't enough student interest in the course, and that kind of goes to play forward to our conversation with regard to new courses. If there's not enough student interest, then the principal makes a decision along with their leadership team in the building whether or not to offer a course, and they did not. Here you'll see that we're pretty well represented with regard to our population of APS students as a whole. With Asian and Black students, we're underrepresented with Hispanic students, overrepresented in multiple students, and overrepresented with white students. But I think there's a pretty healthy, robust, sampling of students from various ethnicities in the class. Here we have English learners, gifted and special education students. We will see here that their gifted has paid a lot of attention to the course and have moved toward this course. And again, it's not a gifted or intensified level course. It's just a course option for our students, but we've asked our educators in all of our settings to differentiate to inspire all kids to pursue the class. So we're going to continue to promote the class as the year moves forward, and as was asked at the last session, Lori Silver and her team are gathering information from the teachers and the students about how well this course is being received by our students and whether or not we're going to continue it, which I expect that we will in the coming years. We've asked to add it to the program of studies because we believe it has been beneficial, and we'll continue to gather data with regard to how successful it's being with all of our students. We also had a conversation about the Career Center and the Arlington Tech, which is located at the Career Center, and wanting to make sure that we had language in the program of studies that accurately communicated what is expected of students as they matriculate through that program. So we wanted to share information with regard to the Algebra 1 Geometry Combined block. These are actually 2 classes taught in one block. So students who successfully complete Algebra 1 and Geometry block are going to earn 2 credits toward graduation and 1 verified credit for the Algebra 1 exam. And this is, I'm not going to read all of this here, but this was added as a motion during our last conversation, and it's for information purposes, which I think is very helpful, so that our students and our families know that if they request a course through their course request form in their counselor conversation, that course may not be offered if we're not financially able to fill the position, or we don't have enough students to compel the principal and the leadership team in the building to offer that course. So this is going to be in our alternative course section of the program of studies, and it will hopefully help families understand exactly what might happen if they enroll in a course that doesn't meet that criterion of being financially capable of offering the course, or enough students enrolled in the course to make it work. But there are additional options outside of the traditional brick and mortar. So if we can't get students in that class, we will make every effort to find students a way to take that course, whether they take it at another school, if they can provide transportation, and we can have conversations about that, how that might play out as well, and then also through online distance learning. We're really using that resource effectively across the county, and we'll continue to do so. And then some amended language. Again, this is another piece of information which will be added at the beginning of every curricular area in the program of studies. Just another reminder that these courses may not make if enough students aren't interested, or we have budget considerations that we have to adhere to. But again, thanks to you that we are able to continue to be ambitious and thoughtful throughout our departments and make these options available to students, and then find a way for them to have access to them if they don't have them in their building. The budgetary slide, I may ask my colleague, Ms. Peterson, to help me out here, but based on conversations that Ms. Peterson has had with principals, I've had with principals, we've talked a little bit about, again, master schedule building is more art than it is science, and every school has a different approach to it, but it is all driven by student interest. So if students are interested, faculty does their best to be able to offer, to find a way to offer that class. If they can't, they reach out to us in teaching and learning, and we find a way to help those individual students get a class. So there's a bit more nuance to it than just saying there's one number that we could share to say that it's going to cost. But you want to add anything, Leslie, or should I just go through? Okay, I'll continue on. So adding the 9 courses at the high school may or may not result in the need for an estimated additional 3 to 4 FTEs across our secondary schools. And then for staffing purposes, we're providing any additional staffing needed from the staffing contingency already in the budget, and then tracking these requests to inform future decisions on the program of studies. Leslie is committed to having conversations with me. I'm committed to having conversations with her from the genesis of the program of study every year moving forward, so that we're making financially responsible decisions. And our principals are now engaged. They provided us with a lot of information that I thought I knew, but now I know because we've engaged them to help broaden our understanding of the process. Okay, now I'm open for any questions, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Byrd. Do we have any speakers?
Yes, we have 2 speakers. Rebecca Hunter.
Hi, Rebecca Hunter. Thank you for allowing me to speak now specifically on the program of studies piece that was just presented on Arlington Tech. Just reading from their own page, Arlington Tech is a rigorous project-based learning high school program that prepares students to succeed in college and in the workplace through collaborative problem solving. Nowhere in their own definition, in their own vision of the program, would it require algebra to be taken prior to joining the Arlington Tech community in 9th grade. And even on their own website, they say the only reason that Algebra 2 is required by 10th grade is to take dual enrollment classes. But why would a dual enrollment history class or a dual enrollment, computer science class or a dual enrollment English class require Algebra 2 by the 10th grade? Again, there is absolutely no basis for requiring this additional math level other than to be exclusionary at this point. Similarly, there are a lot of other issues that are limiting, like physics is the only option for science in 11th grade. And it says here a variety of dual enrolled and career and technical education courses. There is no variety. And again, there is absolutely no legitimate reason that this math requirement is being put upon our students and making it an exclusionary program. It says motivated by student interest. So if they're not motivated or interested in higher level or dual enrolled math, that doesn't mean that they're not going to benefit from this amazing project-based learning. So I would really encourage the school board and staff to really think about that, is this the right way to approach this program? It should be inclusive for all of our students. And right now, having this dual block as an opportunity is really just discriminatory.
Thank you for your comments, Ms. Hunter.
Next speaker, Elisa Cowan.
Good evening. Elisa Cowan here, Chair of the Arlington Career Center's Advisory Committee and co-chair of the Career Technical and Adult Education Advisory Committee for ACI, and part of the original 2013 team that created the vision paper for what is now Arlington Tech. I'm here tonight because Arlington Tech is growing and thriving, but needs additional directions and resources to assure that the current vibrant trajectory of the school maintains alignment with the vision paper of 2013. Arlington Tech was envisioned to be the most inclusionary of high schools, providing project-based learning that is known for being a universal learning pedagogy. Like a youngster learning to ride a bike, training wheels are used until the child learns to manage balance and momentum. So too, Arlington Tech is growing and it has found its balance within APS. However, in the first year of the program, the math prerequisite was a budget and planning necessity because there were few students and that thus the staffing budget was for a part-time math teacher. But now there are 150 freshmen each year, and there are multiple full-time math teachers in the building. Arlington Tech should now be able to balance teaching the same full spectrum of math courses offered to ninth graders at every other high school in the county. It's time to remove the application and enrollment training wheels. If more resources are needed to implement open access to Arlington Tech, then I request that you, the school board, provide those resources. Through the lens of equity of access to opportunity within a public school, I am not comfortable with the continuation of this exclusionary practice. In closing, I believe that the math prerequisites should be eliminated because the careers of the future need our full participation by our entire community, not just those gifted in math at an early age. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Ms. Cohen.
Nice to see you.
Good to see you. Okay. Colleagues, are there any comments or clarifying questions on the item? Dr. Kennan?
Yes, and thank you for this update. I really appreciate the work that was done this week. I want to just ask about the message that mentions that an alternative, if courses don't fill or aren't offered, there might be an online option. Is it going to be clear in the program of studies how a family gets to that? It might be able to access that. I mean, I think my general sense in working with families is that's kind of like a hidden secret that they have to know to ask about, and they don't always get offered that information by their counselor. So, are we doing anything to make sure that if a student wants to take something, we're saying right here that we might be able to offer online? How are they going to get that information about whether it's available to them?
Thus far, we have not chosen to place every online course that we offer in the program of studies. We haven't done that yet. We could move in that direction. We are asking our counselors to have conversations with our students about that opportunity. If a student were to request a traditional brick and mortar class and it was not available, the counselor would be responsible for informing that student that an option does exist and that there's a form that they use online to share with me, and then we find that course through a conversation with the student and their family about what options are available to the student.
So for now, we just have to make sure that every counselor is getting that information.
I'm very confident that that information is available to the counselors. I'd be interested to hear if there are students who are unaware. I have not heard that, but I'm sure that there are instances where students have not been completely aware of the options that are available to them. But we will absolutely work with Pam McClellan. I meet with them monthly to ensure that during this process that we're informing families, and I'll talk to Pam about informing counselors when they do their visits to classrooms in the near future, right after winter break, that they inform them that if a class does not make up, they have that opportunity. Or in addition to the class not making up, students who just want to add additional space in their schedule take online classes, and it's happening an awful lot. So students know about this opportunity. Now, to ensure that all of our students have the level of advocacy that is required for them to look for those freedoms, then we have to make sure that we encourage our counselors to do that proactive work to engage students and families who might have an inkling of being able to do that to free up space in their credit and in their schedule so that they can take another class. We need to make sure that we do that for everyone. And you have my commitment to do that.
Thank you, Dr. Kennan. Ms. Van Doorn?
I'm sorry, I just want to make a caution here in what you just said. It was my understanding that if you just simply choose to take an online class because you're freeing up your schedule, but you could have been in a segment of it, that you actually have to pay for that.
That is
The
true.
only time that it's free or you can choose to do that at no cost is if it doesn't fit in your schedule or we no longer offer it.
That is true.
So I think this is great, and I do think this needs to go out in front of parents, so maybe we need to highlight this somehow because this is what goes home to all the families or is available to them. So I agree with Dr. Cannon, and I helped several families actually this summer try to figure out what they were doing, and the counseling staffs were very responsive, but the parents did have to request the options to do that. So maybe we just need to make that more. But definitely mention the cost, because if it's just something a student wants to do because they want to free up their schedule, there'll be a cost involved, and we need to make sure they know that.
Thank you, Ms. Van Dorn. Mr. Goldstein, do you have questions or clarifying comments?
Yeah, I do. Thank you. So, Ty, could you go to slide 3, please? Well, actually, go back one more to slide 2. So this one tells us about the demographic ethnicity, the relationship between who's in the storytelling class and what the percentage of that ethnicity is in the middle school population.
Yes,
but if
sir.
you go to the next slide, 3, what's that bottom line say?
That's the percentage of the students that are enrolled in the class. So
Okay.
9% of the students enrolled in storytelling are L students.
Okay.
49% are
what's
gifted students.
We're missing a row here.
Yeah, it was difficult for us, and let me preface this by thanking the people in the data team that helped me put this together. It was difficult for us to put that in because of I can't exactly explain why we had trouble putting this together with that ethnicity, but I can get it for you. We weren't able to put it in a way that was going to be easily communicated for this evening's presentation. I can get that information though. If you're asking for demographic information with regard to the gifted Ls and special education.
Well, that's what that last row is showing us. But what I'm interested in is what's the percentage of the enrollment that is EL, that is gifted, and that is special ed, so we can compare.
Sure, I don't have that. I can get that for you.
Okay. Sorry.
He's asking for the bottom line here, which says that 8.2% of our middle school students are Asian.
Yeah.
He wants to know what percentage of our L students are. Our middle school students are Ls, our middle school students are gifted, and our middle school students are special education. I can get that information
Correct.
for you.
Okay, thanks. Could you go to slide 5, please? So this is either confusing or consternation producing for me. Because I think it says there are alternative methods to taking the course. If you can't take it in the classroom, you could take it distance learning, or you could take it at another school, or you could take it. But what that adds up to for me is more expense, and we're not able to quantify that expense. Is that correct? And the same question is going to come up when we talk about summer school in the next item.
Sure.
Which is how many people are going to be enrolled in this. Do you have an idea of how many students, because we're right at the beginning of this experience, we only got 3 months under our belt since this storytelling course has been offered. Do you have any basis for projecting how many students there will be next year?
Not yet, not until we begin doing the course request forms right after winter break.
So it's possible that there's a big buzz about it, and everybody's heard what a great course it is, and so enrollment is 5 times what it was this year, and we don't have the space for it, and so then they're going to do distance learning or go to another school or something like that. But quantifying the expense, what it's going to cost, is going to be extremely difficult, and that's the part that's giving me heartburn.
You might be asking me 2 different questions. We don't offer the storytelling class online. That's a middle school class, and it's only offered in the building. So if it does exponentially grow to 5 times what it is today, that will be less students that are taking the other English 8 class. So those students would matriculate into the storytelling class, as would the educators. So the teachers would just, instead of teaching regular English 8, they teach the storytelling English 8. So that difference would be, it's a zero-sum game there.
Okay, I didn't realize that for that course at the middle
the
school
online
level.
courses are for the high school courses, and
Okay.
yeah.
But the point is, we don't know what the enrollment is, therefore we don't know what the expense for the alternative delivery method is, be it online or another school or
Yeah.
whatever.
I could get information, I could trend the data, for what we've done in the past with regard to online to show you how it's growing and what it has cost us. Because as Ms. Van Doren mentioned, some students pay for it themselves, sometimes we pay for it, and then sometimes we share the cost based on the student's ability to pay for it themselves. So if there are extenuating circumstances where we can't work it into their schedule or we can't offer the course that's in our program of studies, then we've paid for that traditionally and will continue to do that. That's my expectation. But then if there is a student who's making a choice that I want to take this class in lieu of taking it in a brick and mortar setting where we have space and we have the class, but they want to take it on their own so that they can move forward and free up some space in their subsequent year of study, then that's a family's conversation. But again, if that family has an economic constraint, we would work to support that as well.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Ms. O'Grady?
I just want to thank the executive leadership team for going back, scrubbing the numbers, and figuring out that we can offer all of these, what I consider amazing classes to our students in a cost-effective way. I think this is important because our students do need to be exposed to some of the latest technology, some of the latest job opportunities through their coursework, whether it's cybersecurity, even early childhood education, because we understand that we are looking at a shortage of teachers. It is important for us to expose our students to the opportunities that exist that can help them be employable people. And this is an example of that, and I want to thank the team for coming together and figuring out how we can do that in a cost-effective way. In addition to that, I think it's important for our students, whom we heard from earlier today, who attended the Minority Student Achievement Network Conference, that they want to see courses that reflect who they are. And I think it's important for other students in our system to have access to courses that express the diversity in our community and our country. And so this is an important step that we can take to move forward to give our students access to that. And we are doing it in a way that is cost effective, and I think that is going to be enlightening for all of our students. And so I want to thank you guys for coming forward and figuring out how to do that. In addition to that, I wanted to speak to the storytelling class. I was happy to see the demographic breakdown on the course for this 8th grade English course, because when we talked about it coming into fruition, I did challenge the Department of Teaching and Learning to ensure that when that class comes forward, that we see a diversity of students who are participating in it. We have a little work to do in some of our other demographic areas. I feel that we will be able to do that. And I'm excited to see that students want to take this course. Recently, we spoke to some students on the Student Advisory Board, and one student said, you know, I had the opportunity, I'm working on my college essay, and I don't feel that I had enough opportunity to write a story about myself. And I think being able to have the opportunity to take a class like this where you're writing about yourself or someone else or telling a story and not just writing on something else that you might have read about is an important skill that our students can learn and can serve them later on, even at that college writing class. So when we talk about making changes and being on the board, for me, this is an important moment, because this means that we're giving the students what they need and what they need to succeed potentially in the future. So I'm happy that we were able to come back to this, figure out a way to offer this to our students, because voice and choice and the ability to be able to have students see themselves in the work is important. So I consider this an important moment. I want to thank the staff for working to help us make this happen in a cost-effective way.
Thank you, Ms. O'Grady. We are now ready to act on the program of studies. May I have a motion? Oh, do you have another
I just had
comment?
one more question that I think belongs before the motion. Ms. Talento, actually, I'm curious. I know that, you know, board members have had conversations about this question about multiple pathways at the Career Center. We heard some speakers tonight. Would there be a chance for us to have a more in-depth conversation on this topic about Career Center pathways, perhaps going forward after tonight? Because I think we may have left some of this a little bit, we may be looking at leaving this a little bit ambiguous at the moment. So will there be a chance for us to talk in more detail about the Arlington Tech program later this year?
Yes, what I'll do is I'll put it on our weekly meeting discussions to determine the best way to bring that forward. I understand that there's concern about the prerequisite piece. We removed the prerequisite language that was being considered at one point during one of these drafts because we want to make sure the description is in it, but we need to determine what the multiple pathways are. So I put it on my list to bring back to weekly meeting to determine whether we need a work session, a COW, or there are other ways to enter into this discussion and ensure that we are addressing the multiple pathway focus of Arlington Tech. Okay. Any other comments or questions? Go ahead.
I just want to say that I do support moving forward and having this conversation. I think that there is there's space for us to talk about some of the things that were brought up tonight. So I look forward to having that discussion.
Thank you, Ms. O'Grady.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Goldstein. We are now ready to act on the program of studies. May I have a motion?
I have a motion. I move that the board approve the changes to the middle and high school program of studies as presented tonight and as listed in the documents accompanying the presentation.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a comment after the motion's been made, please.
Okay. Go
Thank
ahead,
you very
Ms.
much.
Ward.
Now that the motion's on the table, I'd like to make the following comments. First of all, thank you so very much for your presentation, and I'm glad that we've gotten to this point. I wanted to wait till the motion was done because I know that I wasn't able to be here at the last meeting to move this along, but I'm actually glad that happened because we are so overwhelmed in this community with the physical aspects of our buildings and boundaries that I think we give short shrift to our academic program. And you've done some amazing work here to address the request of our students to have our curriculum be more relevant to them. And I really applaud you and the entire staff for doing that, and I would love us to be able to spend even more time on that. So I have 3 points I want to make. First was the thank you. Secondly, I'd like to request that next year we consider I'd request that next year we consider having a work session on the program of studies, because it seems to me, and I put that to the superintendent and to the leadership team for next year, because as our system evolves to a 28,000 plus student system and the world changes, I know you're going to be making more changes, and I would encourage you to do that. So I think maybe we need time to discuss it, because our conversations have been somewhat broken up at this time.
If I may, we'd welcome that opportunity. And again, as I began my statement today, it was this has been a robust conversation, and it communicates, I think, to our community what's important, and it's curriculum. This conversation involved all of us, so it got us all going, and I think what was a healthy conversation. My only request is if we're going to do this, it either needs to be as soon as the school year starts or late this school year. I don't know if that's possible, but if we're going to have a conversation, because this ball starts rolling as soon as we hit the ground in September. So if we're going to have a conversation or a work session about it, I would love for it to be this year, if that's an option.
Okay. I'll leave that to the chair and the future leadership. So thank you again, and thank you, board. I think as we get overwhelmed with all of our facility stuff, we should try to keep the curriculum issues. We should have the deliberate and methodical mindfulness to put our curriculum and our kids before, and what they're learning in the classroom before our facilities needs, frankly. And then I would really support a conversation, and I would be happy to do whatever I have to do in my schedule to have a really in-depth discussion about Arlington Tech. I had forgotten about this document, and I remember it. And I remember this was one of the first meetings I was in, was about the establishment of Arlington Tech. And I have deep concerns about how it has veered from this. And I think we just all have to get on the same page. We know we have a staff that has gotten a lot of experience under their belt. I'd like to know the demographics of the existing program. Interim Superintendent Cynthia Johnson, I had sent some questions. Are there answers to those questions at this time?
Not at this time. I think we need a little bit more time to follow up. There's
Okay.
a lot of discussion that's taking place around this that is actually going to take some time.
So as a part of asking that we have a work session or some kind of a session, and I think it's going to take some written work and some real thought and questions, getting questions from the community and from the board to resolve what seems to be some conflicting ideas of what Arlington Tech is and should be. I asked about the demographics of Arlington Tech, about the attrition rate from Arlington Tech, the number of kids who start the program and leave the program and end the program. This will be our first year. I'd like to have those numbers, and I also would like to know what CTE classes that we have that have requirements related to math. I'd like to know that. Those are just some of the beginning facts I'd like to have on the table as we consider that. So those are my requests. Thank you. Program of studies, work session next year, so we can really talk about instruction or as soon as possible, and also the Arlington Tech piece. But thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Van Doren. Mr. Goldstein, did you want to comment on the motion?
Yeah, thank you. So I'll try and keep this brief because I know we've talked about this before, and we talked about it at the info item. So I'm not going to be supporting the motion this evening. I think there's too many problems with it. I think we need to spend time talking about how to work out those problems. A work session, I think, is a great idea. I do have to say that this is tough. I am completely in agreement with what Nancy said, that all of you are providing the appropriate strong focus on instruction. I realize we need a program of studies. I completely agree with what Monique said, that these courses are providing good future pathways for our students, and I know we need it. But I've got some problems with it, budget, the additions methodology. I would like to see intensified classes. I've said this before, and of course the Arlington Tech piece. So I could go into more detail and kind of belabor this, but I think everybody knows what my objections are. So I just wanted to let everybody know that I'll not be supporting it.
Thank you, Mr. Goldstein. Do you have a comment on the motion, Ms. O'Grady?
I just wanted some clarity. In the presentation, it says there could be 3 to 4 additional teachers who might be needed across the schools. And just wanted to confirm again whether or not that could be something that could potentially be covered because of growth in the student population or other staffing contingencies.
We currently have been covering anywhere between about 2.5 to 4 teachers at the high school level for additional teachers related to needing to offer electives. So we've been providing that out of the staffing contingency already, but the staffing contingency is a contingency. It should not be there to pay for something that we are experiencing year after year. In addition to that, we've got a lot of pressure on our staffing contingency as we continue to grow. So if we are going to continue to offer courses and stretch the capabilities of our schools and our teachers, then we need to be prepared to provide some additional staffing to help that.
Okay. And if we have additional student growth and that growth were to require more teachers to be hired in any event, could that potentially cover some of these classes?
The teachers that we add as a result of growth are specific around the planning factor. And what we're talking about here is having classes that aren't at that planning factor level, that have smaller class sizes, because we have such a broad variety of classes that we offer. So they don't all have 28 or 23.4 or 25.8 students in them. They have 20 or 17 students in them, and that puts pressure on that allocation of teachers. So That is why they come back to us and say, I can't do it with the teachers that I have, I need more. So even allowing for growth, that's based on that planning factor, and I know that some of these classes will not get to that same planning factor level, so we have to provide some additional cushion.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you. Still support it.
Mr. Goldstein?
Yeah, thank you. I just want to follow up on that. I should have asked this before. This all relates to my budget heartburn on this. And this second bullet, additional 3 to 4 FTEs, what's that next word? Is that for each secondary school?
Across the secondary schools.
That's only 3 to 4 total for all of the middle school and high school?
Yes, that's what we've been providing out of staffing contingency over the last several years.
Oh, I thought you just said it was like 2.5. Or
Anywhere between 2.5 to 4.
okay, so that's what
Average
you've
3
been
to 4.
providing.
As
So
we grow, it'll probably be more.
If we're planning to take necessary funds for supporting an additional 3 to 4 FTE out of, for these new courses, out of contingency, does that mean we're going to bump up the contingency this year compared to, last year?
What my suggestion is here is that we continue to provide it out of staffing contingency as we have over the past couple of years in FY21, but that we make a concerted effort to track these specific requests so we can come back to the board with actual data around what the high schools and the middle schools need in order to provide this broad spectrum of elective courses and courses across the board for our students, so that we can then say, we are going to put this number of FTE in the budget specifically for this thing that we know that we will incur every year.
All right. We have some really significant budget issues that we have to deal with when we get into budget sessions.
Correct.
So significant that they made it into the budget direction to the superintendent. And so I understand, because of the timing, that this issue needs to happen now or very soon, but budget devoted to 3 or 4 FTEs are going to affect a certain bucket in the budget, which is the amount in that bucket is going to affect what's available in every other bucket. And that means making a decision today about what's available in the budget that we haven't made yet.
Actually, my
That's my
recommendation
heartburn.
is to postpone the decision, to continue to do what we're doing right now in FY21, so that there's not that specific budget pressure in FY21. Track this over the course of the next year or so that when we're working on the FY22 budget, we can bring it back to you with very specific data around the classes and the amount of staffing that is needed, and then put that into the FY22 budget as an increase in the budget specifically for those classes.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Okay, I'm going to go Dr. Kennan and then you. Dr. Kennan?
I just wanted to follow up on this, and we might be belaboring this too much, but I struggled with the same issue. And at the end of the day, trite statement, the budget season is the budget season. We're not in budget season. If worse comes to worse, and we get to that point, and there are too many choices and principals can't fill the classes, if we don't allocate funds, and we don't think we can use that contingency because we need it for something else, then we do get to that. Principals have to make the tough decisions about what they can offer. As of today, that's why we're putting all that caveat in. We're really not promising that the budget is there. We're not making that decision tonight. Again, that's why I was worried 2 weeks ago. I thought we were kind of making a budget decision prematurely, but we're not. We are not adding money tonight. And hopefully, when we get down to it, if we need it, hopefully we will then have it to make in the budget process so that we can fund those courses. But the fact is, we're not promising that these courses will actually occur until we fund them, and that's going to happen in the spring.
Thank you, Dr. Cannon. Ms. Van Dorn?
Okay, I am reminded of an old business adage: when you're growing and making a business grow and solvent, that you don't, I'm sorry, Ms. Peterson, the bean counters can't rule. Because if you are always noodling down to the exact dollar, you are not necessarily investing in growth. And we have to grow the curriculum in this school system. The amount of money we're talking about is 0.06% of our budget. 0.06%. We have now spent 15 minutes of our board time talking about 0.06%. I argue that this is an operational issue that should be in the hands of the superintendent and the great skills of our principals to manage within a curriculum budget these extremely small adjustments that allow us to support the growth and appropriate adaptation of our curriculum to meet the needs of our students. And I think we cannot noodle over such a teeny amount of money that I know our staff can manage without board meddling. So I would really admonish us to please stay out of this and let the superintendent do his or her job, as well as the curriculum people who are putting this together. So while I appreciate this, I think we've gone too far, and I would really like us to vote on this and allow these folks to do their job.
Thank you, Ms. Van Dorn. Ms. Peterson, I do have a comment. I just wanted to share that as you look at that data, consider whether you have more than 1 year of data, and if not, maybe we need to push your request to look at how we make it permanent part of our budget for fiscal year 23, because I wouldn't want to rush without having more than a year's worth of data, which we may have, but I just don't know. So just feedback for you as consideration. Okay, thank you. We are now ready to act on the program of studies. The motion has been already read. We have seconded. So all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Motion passes 4-1. Thank you, Mr. Word. I
Thank you.
appreciate it. Our final action item is the fiscal year 2021-2030 CIP direction. Ms. Johnson, would you please introduce our staff?
Mr. Chadwick, would you do the honors, please?
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening.
This is for action. So I propose to just go over the changes that have been made since we brought it to you 2 weeks ago for information, or just over 2 weeks ago. So there are no changes, obviously, to the connections to the strategic plan and the overall direction. Where we have made changes is in the direction regarding elementary schools, and we have removed the dates. And so the direction for the elementary schools is to increase capacity as soon as fiscally feasible to address enrollment growth, particularly in the urban corridors, prioritizing first the Roslyn-Ballston corridor, second the Columbia Pike corridor, and third the Richmond Highway corridor. And then for middle schools, also increase the capacity as soon as fiscally feasible. We have added 2 design studies to the list of design studies. The first is a new elementary school on a site to be determined. So basically, we will determine the approximate cost of a new elementary school for 750 seats or so, based on numbers that we have for the last 2 schools, or ones that we're doing currently, and projection into the future with escalation. And then a similar effort around an addition to one of our middle schools at a location or locations to be determined. The estimated cost of those is each around $12,500, and that means that we're spending about $25,000 more of the $614,000 we had available. So that will leave us with around $192,500 in the in that budget line item. We are receiving tomorrow the final fee proposals from our design teams who will do this work, and we're expecting those to be actually less than this amount. And those are the changes that we've made to the direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chadwick, for the presentation. Do we have any speakers, Ms. Mercado?
We have one speaker, Paul Mulligan. I think he's gone.
Okay. Thank you. Colleagues, are there any, would we like to read the motion first, or do you want to make comments first? Okay. Are there any comments on the presentation, clarifying comments or questions? Mr. Goldstein?
Okay, thank you. So you changed the language to take out the years.
Yes.
But I think you had in there prioritizing, let me see. Oh, yeah, in the first bullet there, prioritizing first the RB corridor, then the Columbia Pike corridor, and third the Richmond Highway corridor. Okay, so if we're prioritizing the RB corridor, then why do we need design studies on sites that are not in the RB corridor? Because we don't have enough, we're not going to have enough money in the CIP to do, lots of stuff.
That's true, but the elementary school process that's being gone through now may find other solutions for the Roslyn-Ballston corridor, in which case we would then move our initial efforts or CIP projects to the western end of Columbia Pike.
Inserting that in the CIP or adjusting afterwards based on
well, actually, the plan
boundary
would be
process?
to have it in the CIP, yes, and that's partly why the elementary process is being scheduled now, because it does have an influence on what we decide to do in the CIP.
Okay, if you can go to the last table
Yes.
of the list of, number 13 and 14. So how do you do that if you don't have a site? How do you do a design study to figure out the feasibility of adding 750 or whatever?
Well, it won't be so much a design study as an estimate of what the cost would likely to be if we found a site. And we don't really expect to be able to find a site between now and the time that the CIP is completed and approved by the school board.
Okay, so number 13 then would say, the design or the study would say, if you were able to find a site in the RB corridor, it would likely cost you X to build an elementary school of 750 capacity.
Yes, with some qualifiers, because if it has if it needs to have structured parking, which I hope it wouldn't, then that would be an additional expense, obviously.
Yeah, okay, all right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or clarifying comments? Okay. We are now ready for a motion. May I have a motion, please?
My pleasure.
Thank you.
I move that the board approve the FY 2021-2030 capital improvement plan direction as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Are there any questions regarding the motion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Chadwick.
Thank you. I have the next item.
Oh, okay. We have two information items tonight. The first is a change to the construction contract for Ham Middle School. So, Mr. Chadwick, since you're already at the podium, if you would like to start your presentation.
As you mentioned, this is a change to the construction manager advisor contract. This is not the construction manager who builds the project, but the ones who advises us and supplements our staff during the course of it. This change to the construction manager advisor services contract is required due to the schedule extension of the project. School board approval is required because the individual change order exceeds $100,000 and because it results in the sum of cumulative changes exceeding 25% of the original contract sum. The change is incorporated within the current funding approved by the school board, so no increase in funding is necessary. The original contract sum for the CM advisor was $696,493. We have already approved change orders amounting to $97,800. This one would add $162,733, which would bring the revised contract sum for the construction manager advisor to $957,026. And the recommendation is to approve the change order, cumulative change value of $260,533, and establish the new fixed fee total of $957,026 as the basis from which to measure any future changes, and increase the existing purchase order to include that value. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chadwick. Do we have any speakers? Okay. Colleagues, are there any questions? Okay, I have a question. Sorry. I just wanted to get some clarity. If you could just help me understand the original contract sum. I noted that in the footnote on slide 3, it states that we approved this original contract sum, but I know that we approved on October 17th a much bigger amount to finish out the project and finish out the change orders. So can you just help me understand what the contract sum is in regards to that bigger amount?
So these services are for the construction manager advisor. It's actually HERE on this project.
Okay.
And they provide full-time field presence and a lot of management of the contract, which fills out our staff.
Okay.
They're not actually building the project.
Okay, right.
And so this is a fairly small amount that was already anticipated within the increase in funding that you approved. In fact, it's slightly less than what we had estimated in that amount. And so this is a relatively small amount of the increase that you approved.
Right. Okay, so then the 260.5 thousand that was added, there was an addition expected already. We knew that at the very least we'd be spending $696,000 for this contract sum.
You had previously approved $97,800 before we came to you asking to increase the funding.
Okay.
This increase in funding was anticipated within that larger increase that you approved. And as I just said, it's slightly less than what we.
So this whole number is slightly less than what we originally thought, which was approved in the original funding.
No, this is more. What you approved in the original funding for the construction manager advisor was the $696,000 number.
Okay. I think I understand.
Yeah.
But thank you. I appreciate that clarity.
Could I clarify on that? This is the discussion we had where while we were approving a larger amount, we still expected to approve the change orders that were going to be part of that larger amount.
Yes.
That we didn't want just to have one
correct
approval of an amount and say, go forth, but we wanted to see those change orders as they came.
Yes.
This is all within the new budget.
Absolutely.
And is part of that.
Thank you.
Yes. You're welcome.
There are no other, any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Chadwick. We appreciate it. No, you're good. I just wanted.
Run away.
No, I was confirming because sometimes I miss, my peripheral is not as great. So you're good. Thank you very much for the presentation. Okay. We'll now hear the annual summer school report and proposed fees. And this, I apologize, the item that we just heard will come back for action at our next meeting. So we'll now hear the annual summer school report and proposed fees. Ms. Johnson, would you please introduce yourself?
Yes, it would be my pleasure. I'd like to introduce Wendy Pilch and Tyrone Bird, and they're going to do the summer school monitoring report presentation.
Good evening, school board members, Interim Superintendent Johnson, and our ELT colleagues. We are going to give you a brief overview of some good news from summer 2019. some items that we've learned, and that is going to help us move forward with a plan for summer 2020. So we had close to 5,500 students participate in summer school 2019 from pre-K all the way through grade 12. Quite a few students. 3,300 of those were in our elementary programs. We'll be talking more about that later. We added a recreation block for students in our elementary strengthening in summer 2019. And that was to provide engaging opportunities for them, as well as a bit of a cost savings, so we thought, in our school day, and we'll talk a little bit about that as we go along as well. And in middle school, there were some highlights in a 21% increase in students checking out books over the summer and an 80% SOL score improvement. You'll hear more about that as we go along as well. Oops, missed your slide.
Hello again. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the bright spots with regard to summer school. On the far left there, you'll see we've had a poetry slam. It looks like it was very fun. We had some fun with fractions and Kahoot. And then on the far right, Ms. Johnson's always asking us to share awesome stories. And I think this is an awesome story from Miss Allison Barnes, who was one of our teachers this summer school. She says, "Thanks to APS Virginia for having me for summer school. I have been so moved meeting and learning from these students. Teaching kids who struggled during the school year, I see the power of meeting students where they are and bringing them up to see their higher potential." I'm going to read further down. Oh, I'm sorry. I got new reading glasses, so I guess nobody laugh. Look at that, huh? All right. Listening to the challenges that held my students back throughout the year, my eyes have been opened a little bit more. Thanks to their openness, I am a better teacher now than when I started five weeks ago, with a greater capacity to see the struggles my students might be facing. So this shows the value and the strength that can happen in a 5-week summer school, and how we can help not only students but our educators develop a deeper love for education. What we've learned that we are going to need to increase our consistency with regard to applying criterion for elementary strengthening. We also learned that not only does summer school impact teaching and learning, but it has a wide impact across our division, from human resources to facilities, transportation, and information systems. All of those cohorts work together to put on a product of summer school, so that impact is felt throughout our system. And then we're going to need to work closely with the Office of Special Education to refine extended school year planning and timeline. This is a look at our performance with regard to growth over the summer. If you'll see, Wendy, you just mentioned that we had 80% growth in our secondary settings. So what you see here is a representation of students who sat for an SOL in the spring and then also sat for one in the summer. So we had 80% of the students who took an assessment in the summer that also took one in the spring. 80% of those students demonstrated growth. We'll talk a little bit later about how many of them passed the exam, but this shows that there is growth involved in summer school. So coming to summer school, showing up every day, engaging teachers like Ms. Barnes helps you perform better on this exam. This is a bit of an infographic, thanks to when she just left, didn't she? Lisa Stengel just left. She helped me put this infographic together. I think it's pretty cool. And it shows our makeup and strengthening students who took an SOL in the spring and then needed to take that SOL again in the summer to earn the verified credit. 50% of those students earned a passing score. That's 138 kids, and I think that's a win. We would love for 382 of the students to have passed, but several of the students, many of the students scored in the low 300s in the spring, and bringing them up another 100 points in 5 weeks would have been a Herculean challenge. Not that we're not up to it, but that's difficult. But we were able to get 138 kids over the line, and then 30, so a total of 80% of the students demonstrated growth, and 20% of our students did not show growth over the summer. So we've got work to do, but I think there's also a story here to tell of how hard the students and the staff worked. And these are our new work for credit students. These are students who did not take an SOL in the previous spring, or taking a class so that they can either move higher in the course of study as they matriculate into high school, or as they are in high school. So they took a new work for credit course over a 5-week period, and 89% of those students earned a passing score on the SOL, and 11% did not. and it's a smaller number of students. And we've also noticed that the number of students sitting for SOLs in the summer has begun to decrease as the state has allowed us to use fewer standardized assessments for demonstration of mastery. So that's probably that trend is going to continue.
So I'm going to go through the offerings, and with that for elementary, I'm going to give you some anecdotes as to some of the things we learned and how it's going to help our work moving forward. In our strengthening program for elementary for 2019, as I said, we provided math and reading instruction and a recreation component, and that was everything from sports to art to we had some juggling. We had a variety of things that were highly engaging for kids. We did hire our assistants and extended day staff to provide that block. The cost savings there was in the majority of our cost for elementary and secondary summer school is in the hourly rate of the teachers. So we did have some cost savings in the salary hourly rate for those staff as opposed to our reading and math interventionists. However, we did have more students than in the past sign up for strengthening. And when we looked at our pre-assessment data, which was really spring data that came in when we started summer school, we had close to 70% of the students who were enrolled in strengthening on or above grade level. So what that tells us is that the idea of what's our phrase we've been using, a school system of schools versus a school system, different schools were adhering different criteria to enrolling students for strengthening. And so what you'll hear later is that we're going to apply the consistent criteria that we've had in the past. We're going to do some communication with our school administrators and with our teachers around what is below grade level at each grade level. What does that look like in terms of a reading level? What does it look like in terms of math? And how are we progress monitoring to know where our kids are? And there will be some oversight from central office in regards to getting the kids that we know need our help most in our strengthening program for this summer. We had multiple enrichment options for students in summer 2019, and we also had a Young Scholars Innovation Academy for our Title I students who were either on, above, or approaching grade level.
Oh, and before I continue, I also have a couple other people to thank. I thank Dan Hauser and Pete Wilderman and my boss, Liseth Mosqueda, who really helped us put the data together for this. Those guys are amazing. And I also want to thank Carolyn. She doesn't have to be here. She's here supporting us. And thank you, Carolyn. She's awesome. She's always got her back. So greatly appreciated. Back to the show. So our summer school, middle school offerings, and high school offerings are here with regard to student well-being. We pledge to provide students a variety of settings, times, and formats for them to engage curriculum. Summer school is one of those opportunities. Students who could benefit from a smaller classroom setting, which is typically the case in summer school, and a shorter truncated time period where they're only focusing on one class or on two classes, could speak to a student's well-being, and they don't have to worry about the other classes that they have or the rest of the day. It's a short school day. So we're offering makeup and strengthening for math, English, and science. Our English learners can participate in English and math in the middle school, and our special education students have English, life skills, and the MIPA program, and then also math. And then there's enrichment opportunities for middle school as well. High school students, pretty much the same, makeup and strengthening with English, social studies, math, science, and health. If students in the middle school need social studies, they take that in the high school. And then English learners have English and math, social studies, special education offerings, new work for credit offerings, and then that virtual instruction. That's, again, growing as the years go on, and I'll collect some data to show you how often those courses are being engaged. And these are some of my favorite slides. There's just people on the right there are some of the great people who've worked with us for years in summer school, and they keep coming back. And the kids know them, the faculty know them, the administration know them, police officers know them. They are like the mayors of summer school. They know all of our kids. They shake hands and give out hugs because they've earned the respect of the kids because they know they're important to them. So it's awesome to see them there every year, year in and year out. On the left, you'll see that we hire 75% of the educators that we use over summer school are APS employees. We see that 25% other people is a good thing. It gives us an opportunity to bring some people from other areas in and say, look how awesome APS is. Wouldn't it be great to work here? Not only do we have amazing resources, but we've got amazing kids. So come and be a part of our program. And we've got 75%, which says that these people know our children, and they want to continue to work with our children on their vacation time in parentheses, because now they're going to commit 5 weeks to students that they already know and maybe get a chance to meet some kids from other schools and give that connection that not only do I know the teachers in my building, but I might know a teacher who teaches in another school building. And if I'm at that school participating in an extracurricular event, I might see that person and broaden and strengthen that connection.
And so with that, I got to go back. When you look at the 700 employees, I have to look over at Mr. Redding and think about the 700 contracts that had to go out at the same time as how many new teacher contracts. Right. So we do have a lot of impact system-wide to summer school, so we want to make sure that we are having the kids there that need it the most, and so we can narrow down the number of kids who are attending and provide other great opportunities through our Parks and Rec for the students that might not need that strengthening. So then I get to the budget, and just to make note, there was an error on the bottom of FY 2020. The delta should be $806,830. So that was a typo that we did not notice until last minute. But as you can see, we have consistently spent over the budget in summer school. And in elementary, I see that for, I would say, probably 3 or more reasons. One is that we continue to enroll students that might not necessarily need the strengthening, but the schools allow these kiddos to register, and we don't want to turn kids away. And that's a really tough thing at the school level. So we would like to provide more oversight central office and have the kids that we know need us the most there at the summer school. In addition, our planning for our extended school year, we have not always been adhering to a timeline so that we can prepare for the number of teachers that we need and or that we know we need to budget for. So we've been working with the Office of Special Education to be sure that we are in line, that we're starting to know now kids who have IEP goals that will require ESY, if they're in there now and we know we're going to need that this summer, we should start to plan ahead for it, and we should be budgeting for it. And in addition, we have always had a deadline for registration for summer school, and it has not always stuck. So for example, in June of last year, way past the deadline, we had over 200 students enroll that, we were well past the deadline for enrollment, and it happened at the school level. And we need to provide better oversight and a stricter timeline so that we can stick to the budget. We know the budget is tight, and so we're committed to really working on that this year.
If I could, really quickly.
Please.
I'm sorry I didn't add this to the slide, but in addition to that, we have been told by the superintendent's office to never turn a family away of a student who needs to go to summer school. So if a student needs to go to summer school and shows up and has a financial difficulty paying for it, we've never turned them away. We begin by giving each of the principals scholarship money to begin that process within that time frame she's describing, but then as it gets close to and even beyond that, if a family reaches out to us and says, my child really needs to go to summer school, can you please help us? We've done it. We've never turned anyone away, and that adds to that price.
Yeah. The final piece that I remember at 10:19 at night was that we have not raised our fee for strengthening summer school in 10 or more years. And so even though our teacher hourly rates have continued to go up for the staff that we need to run it, we haven't changed our fee structure at all. So I believe that is, if I'm right, probably one of the other reasons why we've had a delta every year. So when we look at our proposed changes for secondary, we have no proposed changes. And for our elementary, we are going to create that consistency in our application process and help schools, work with schools to adhere to the criteria for enrollment. We do not, as Mr. Byrd said, we do not want to turn any student away that is below grade level and needs to be in summer school, but we want to make sure that those are the kids who are enrolling. And we're going to tighten our timelines. And I believe that I know Mr. Goldstein is going to ask me about how many kids are going to enroll, and I will not have an exact number for elementary strengthening, but I would estimate that we would probably cut the number in half from around 3,300 to somewhere around 1,000 and 1,500. I looked at fall data to see numbers and percentages below grade level. Hopefully some kids will catch up to grade level by the time registration begins, but that would be a rough estimate. So we hope that by having greater oversight from central office, working with the schools, budgeting, and creating some stricter timelines, that we will be able to stick to our budget. And so again, because the changes are at elementary, we wanted you to see it in a graphic. We have been at 4 weeks for the past several years for summer school. We will stay at the 4 weeks, and we would be offering extended school year, and those are for special education students whose IEPs qualify them for ESY, extended school year. Reading camp, that's for any student who has reading services on their IEP. We've been doing a great job improving with reading camp every summer, and we've had a lot of strong feedback from both kids and families. And we're calling Strengthening Innovation Academy, and for a couple reasons. One is I feel we need to really push the rigor for our kids, even those students who are below grade level. We need to give them the same opportunities that we're giving other students who are considered gifted. And so we're going to be using engineering is elementary project and problem-based learning with these students, allow them to opportunities for critical and creative thinking, as well as build their reading and their math. But we want to push the rigor for these students, and we want to make learning enjoyable. They have to be there for the summer. We want them to be excited to come every day, and we will have our innovation hour, just as we did with our young scholars. So we'll be excited to invite you to come and see the projects that these students create. And this was an idea of our principals, that they would like to open the school libraries this summer, those that will be online, on a weekly basis for book checkout. So they'd like to have teachers come doing read-alouds and helping kids find books that match their interests. So that's a look at our summer. And then the last piece is a proposed change in our fees. The only fee that we were looking at changing is the full fee for makeup and strengthening, and it has previously been at $100, and this proposal would put it at $150. So we open it up for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Byrd. Thank you, Ms. Pilch. Do we have any speakers? Okay. Colleagues, do you have any questions or comments? Ms. O'Grady?
Thank you for outlining the idea for summer school next year. A few thoughts come to mind. I remember last year we were looking at totally changing the way that we did summer school with the hope that we would save $500,000. It's a little sad when I look up and see that we totally changed summer school and we actually went up $500,000, and as opposed to actually spending less. So I guess we didn't really save money. So that's just one thought. The other thought I wanted to share is if we're talking about decreasing number of students who are going to have access to summer school, although serving the students who really need summer school, I think it's going to be really important that we let our community members know that if they were looking for the summer school opportunities that they've had in the past, that is an affordable option to keep their students engaged in learning over 4 weeks, that may not be available to them. And so I would encourage staff to be looking at other ways that we can work with the county and perhaps through Parks and Rec to ensure that they know that they may be seeing a bigger demand on the resources and opportunities that they offer. And in addition to that, if we're not going to be offering enrichment courses in the way that we have in the past as well, working with perhaps our libraries and other groups, again, maybe Parks and Rec, to let them know that there may be more of a pull and a tug. And so I think the earlier that we can express that, if this is how this moves forward when we vote on this, I think it will be imperative for our families, because I can remember when I had young elementary students and I was trying to figure out what to do with them over the summer. Affordability and options can be a daunting task.
Right. And just to let you know, we've had a great relationship with Parks and Recreation over the course of many years, and we have already been in touch with them this year to problem solve and think through if the vote goes through on this, how we can provide more space for them in our schools. And one area we've noted, I was actually talking with somebody today who works with Parks and Rec camps, and she said that there had been in previous years a decrease in the camps where the lowered fee is actually $0. But we had already spoken with them, and they are going to look at increasing those camps, providing more, especially when we looked at the first week after school is out. There are fewer camps, or had been in the past, and I think it was just availability of room possibly, but if this goes forward, we would have more space for them, and I know that the demand will be there. The reduced rate can go all the way down to free. So they use a similar sliding scale that we do. So we're going to do a lot of outreach, communication, summer fairs within our schools, and principals have already started to talk about ways that they would communicate with families and help them register for other camps if they're not eligible for the summer strengthening.
Thank you. Mr. Goldstein?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, thank you. Thanks very much. So I'm really happy to see these creative changes to summer school. I've thought for a long time that summer school program could use some adjustments for a couple of reasons. One is meeting the students' needs where they are, and another, of course, is budget. So I'm happy to see this. And I want to thank you both for the responses to the questions I put in, which were very helpful. I just have a couple of questions. I think Monique actually addressed one of them on slide 12. So you're anticipating, from the answer to my question, you're anticipating a $500,000 savings based on which number? The actual? The adopted? Based on the actual?
Based on the actual, I mean, my hope would be that it is even more, but we can't predict. At the end of Q2, we'd be looking to see who's below grade level then, but based on the numbers right now, it would be at least $500,000.
Yeah, I should ask that question first, about how you would project the number of students that you would be expecting in summer school. I mean,
yeah, it would be, I did crunch numbers of how many students just in reading right now were below grade level or even close to below grade level, to try and give you some form of an estimate. That doesn't mean that all of those kids will actually be here this summer and that their families will want to sign up. But we would average somewhere around, between 1,000 and 1,500 students, which would be a decrease from 3,300 last summer. Total students.
Okay, well, is there an analogy that can be used from last summer or the summer before that? I mean, is there any trend line about the students that we would be enrolling in summer school this year? Some of those students with similar needs for summer school must have been enrolling last year and the year before and the year before.
Right. Well, I would assume we're going to have about half of the number of kids total as last summer. So that would, this amount includes middle and high school, so I would have to take out just the elementary portion of the budget, but I would venture to guess that it's at least $500,000, if not more.
Okay, we'll keep our fingers crossed. One more question.
Let's
You're
go
using
with
this term that I'm not familiar with, extended school year?
Right.
And what that
So
apparently is
those
a
are
term
for
of art?
it is students with an IEP that have a critical life skill, and it's something that would, if they don't have the teaching over the summer, or it could even be a long period of time in between, even some would have it during spring break. It's to make sure that they don't regress in the progress that they're making. So these are written into IEPs. And by law, we provide ESY services.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, thank you. That's very helpful. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Goldston. Ms. Van Doren?
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you for all the hard work. Am I correct that there is no staff person who administers summer school, that's done as a part-time of many people's job? Is that accurate?
We have a part-time position, and actually, she would have been here today, but she is out sick. But we do have a 0.5 summer school coordinator. Yeah, it's called coordinator, Sherry Furlot.
And she works at that half-time all year?
Correct.
Okay, because I was under the impression that somebody took that on full-time when summer school started. Is that wrong?
So all of the departments really take a big role in planning with Ms. Furlot, starting now. But there's a big portion of our supervisor and teacher specialists of English language arts, of gifted, of mathematics, and so on and so forth, that start to spend a lot of their week on it, really starting in February.
Okay. My point, and I'm feeling very old tonight, been doing this for 5 years and been assessing summer school for 5 years and have gone through 2 summer school evaluations. Thank you, this is going to be great. I'll vote for it when it comes up, but I think there is so much more we can be doing with summer school. And I'm not saying you, because I don't see how anybody with what you all have on your plate could possibly do any more than what you're doing. You have to focus on the most critical need. I'd like to see us look at a model like extended day, a model that is self-sufficient, run by an additional staff that really takes on how to utilize the assets that APS has to provide summer opportunities to kids in concert with Parks and Rec. Because right now, we're doing the bare minimum out of necessity for those kids, but we are not allowing kids to grow during the summer. We keep talking about we're only going to offer to the kids who are failing. What about those kids who could be making steps forward? A kid who could be taking a summer class so they could get into Arlington Tech. I think we're missing a huge opportunity here. And if we looked at it as we do with extended day, as a self-sufficient enterprise with an ongoing staff that can take the burden off our current staff, wedging it in, which is what I hear every year. There's always the wish we could do better, we wish we could do more. And then you also have the challenge of actually finding the staff who are willing to work in the summer. There are systems that pull this off, and they do it very, very well, but it requires more than what we're capable right now of giving it. So I would say we ought to look at that, look at even moving it into a situation like extended day. I really think that that is such a fabulous model, and a lot can be learned from it. So I just put that out there because there are several things I think that we're doing. There are a couple I'll mention in weeks to come where I really think we should be doing business differently. And I'm not to say that this isn't great, but I think we can build on it and do even more. My kids, most of my kids, never had an opportunity to go to summer school on APS, and I really wish they could have. I know many, many families whose kids maybe aren't failing, who would rather have them walk down the street and go to that program at the school rather than get on a bus and go somewhere else or have their parents scuttle them around during the summer. So it just seems like we could do better. So I put that out there knowing that I'm not trying to put more pressure on staff to do that or manage within your existing resources, but it seems like if we broke it off and made it almost like its own little business with that piece that is the strengthening, that would be, maybe we could consider that model or see if any school system does that. So that's for you to consider, Ms. Johnson.
So we're always willing to consider, I'm not sure if this is helpful or not, but we have become aware of the fact that none of our neighboring jurisdictions are doing summer school except for ESY.
That doesn't mean that's the right thing to do.
I think you're correct in making that statement, but it does say about it. I think it speaks to the challenges that we really have. Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Van Doren. Dr. Cannon, you do not have questions, is that correct? Okay. I just had a quick question. You mentioned that there are about 200 students who registered late in last summer school. Was that across the board or just in elementary?
That was just in elementary. I know high school has their, secondary has their own way, if you want to talk about, for late registration.
Yeah, that's so probably around the same area, 200 students that make a request late. And sometimes it's because an SOL result hasn't come in yet, or they've taken an expedited retake. So there are some extenuating factors that are involved in the high school level, but we try not to turn anybody away.
Now, and that's what I was going to comment to, that I've personally helped 2 or 3 students who've come to me as I've served as a school board member who've said, I just realized I'm failing, I passed the registration, or a parent, I actually had a case last year where a parent received a letter from the school, it was an English learner, the paper said your child should do a summer school visit online or call. Well, by the time the parent processed it and called, it was after school, the crowds couldn't reach, no clue how to register online, they missed the deadline, so I did work with the superintendent to help these students. And at the middle and high school level, it really actually is imperative that we work with those students, because it really actually, that this student would have not been able to be in algebra in 8th grade, had this, English, there was something that would have prevented the student from moving forward on an advanced track had that student not been able to go.
Yeah, and I think there have been systems in place at the secondary level to provide opportunities for late registration. Right. We just need to do a better job of that in elementary,
yes,
where we start to plan ahead. We know who those kids are now, who we want to invite that need it, but that we can still provide some late registration for kids we knew we had identified needed the summer support, but just the family hadn't gone through the registration process. But we need to learn from our secondary colleagues and how they've been doing it.
No, and I appreciate that, and I just wanted to share that I support trying to tighten it, but at least at the secondary, middle, and high school, I caution us to not, we would hurt students if we go in the other direction. At the elementary school, I think there's time to capture, the elementary school has a lot of a different model where if, we can make up during the time, but middle school and high school becomes different. So I just want to make that comment.
Yeah, I would be remiss if I didn't mention Verlice Gaither and Jeff Stahl, our 2 administrators for summer school. They have exceptional hearts and intellect and are able to put together teams that understand that quandary, and we don't turn high school kids away who need something to continue to matriculate. We'll lose some of these kids if they don't if they don't feel like their year was a success, and sometimes summer is that opportunity to get that success.
Okay, thank you. That was the only comment I had on the presentation. Colleagues, any final comments? Thank you for your work, and we look forward to taking action on this item at our next meeting. Thank you, Ms. Jackson and Ms. Gam, for staying with us through the whole night. We appreciate you being here, and to all of our ELT. So we are now at new business. Board members, is there any new business? Hearing none, this meeting is adjourned.
10:39. Best chair ever.
I tried.